They say betrayal feels like a blade in the back, but that's not true. At least not for me. For me, betrayal felt like an old iron key, cold and heavy in my palm, as I stood in front of the house my mother left behind. The house that should have been my safe place, my roots. But in my sister's hands it became nothing more than currency for her next high. My name is Eiling Wren. Everyone calls me Ash. I grew up believing the only thing that truly mattered was family. That no matter how ugly things got, blood was thicker than any lie, any failure, any bruise. But when my mother died, and the dust of her funeral settled over our lives like suffocating ash, that belief burned away until nothing but bone remained. It started with a letter, one I found tucked inside my mother's sewing basket a month after her funeral. The house deed. My name, not my sister's. And just like that, I own the house we both grew up in. The house we both promised never to sell. I should have known what Mia would do. She'd been spiraling for years. When Dad left, it broke her. When Mum got sick, it shattered her. I thought losing Mum would bring us closer, make us cling to each other the way we clung to Mum when she was gasping her last breaths in that 2-white hospice bed. But grief isn't glue. Sometimes it's acid. I stood on the crumbling front steps that afternoon, turning the key over in my hand. The spring air, so heavy with the promise of rain, it felt like I was breathing through wool. The curtains in the front room were half torn, one corner draped over the old radiator. There were ashes in the fireplace. Mia must have stayed here, or someone did. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale beer, mildew, something burnt. Memories punched at me like fists. Christmas mornings by that same fireplace. Mum's lemon drizzle cake cooling on the sill. Dad's booming laugh echoing down the hallway before he slammed the door one final time. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling in the emptiness. "Mia? You here?" Silence. Just the creak of the floorboards as I walked toward the kitchen. The refrigerator door was open, buzzing like an insect trapped behind glass. Empty. The only thing inside was an expired carton of milk that smelled like something died in it. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, the weight of the house pressing on my ribs. I hadn't lived here in years. After Mum fell ill, I moved to the city. Tried to build a life big enough to carry the weight of her dying. Mia stayed behind. She told me she could handle it. Said the town was too small for me anyway. "Fly away, little bird," she'd teased. "I'll keep the nest warm." I should have known the nest would rot. A noise upstairs snapped me back. A thud. Heavy. Deliberate. Someone was here. I grabbed the rusted poker from the fireplace and crept up the staircase. My heartbeat pulsing in my ears. The landing smelled of stale cigarettes and mold. The door to Mum's old bedroom was ajar. "Mia?" I whispered. My voice cracked like old paint. I pushed the door open with the tip of the poker. She was there, curled on the floor by the wardrobe, knees to her chest, dark hair a greasy tangle over her face. Empty pill bottles rolled around her like dead insects. "Mia." I dropped the poker, rushing to her side. "What did you do?" "Mia, wake up!" She moaned, shifting, her cracked lips trying to form words. Her eyes fluttered open, red, glassy, unfocused. "Ash, you came." I gathered her in my arms, feeling how thin she'd gotten. Nothing but bone and whispers. I should have been angry, furious at her for letting it get this far. But all I felt was a hollow ache that made my hands shake. "You need help," I said. "I'm taking you to the hospital." Her eyes widened in fear, and she pushed weakly at my chest. "No, don't. Don't. They'll know." "Who'll know?" "What did you do?" She coughed, her whole body shuddering. "It's gone, Ash. It's all gone. The house. The money." I froze. The house? The deed was in my name. She couldn't have. "Mia, what did you do?" She laughed, a dry, choking laugh that made my stomach turn. "It's not yours anymore. I sold it. I sold it for him." "For who?" My voice felt like it belonged to someone else. "What are you talking about?" She clutched my wrist with surprising strength. "I didn't mean to, I swear. He said he'd kill me if I didn't. I signed papers. But it's okay. You can get it back. You can fix it. The smell of stale sweat and old tears filled my nose. Who, Mia? Who did this? She went limp. Her eyes rolled back, her grip loosening. I slapped her cheek gently. Mia, stay with me. Who did this? But she was gone, slipping back into whatever chemical fog she'd crawled into to escape this reality. I stayed there on the floor with her head in my lap until my legs went numb. I should have called an ambulance right then, but I didn't. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to drag her back to the girl who used to braid my hair while we watched Mom bake pies. Instead, I dragged her to my car, drove her to the same hospital where we lost Mom. Watched them wheel her away on a gurney, her eyes vacant, her arms dotted with needle tracks. A nurse asked me to sit down, told me they'd do their best, that I should go home and get some rest. But where was home? If what Mia said was true, this house, my mother's house, my house, was gone. I didn't go back to the crumbling steps. I didn't even grab my bag. I drove around town instead, my old hometown, that hadn't changed in all these years. Same peeling paint on the diner, same cracked pavement outside the corner shop. Except now, every face felt like a threat. Every shadow felt like a hand reaching for my throat. At dawn, I pulled into the solicitor's office that handled Mum's will. I banged on the door until Mr. Finley, the same man who held my hand at the reading of Mum's will, opened up with a mug of coffee in his hand and a look of alarm on his face. Ailing, what is it, 4 a.m? What happened? My sister sold my house, I said. The deed was in my name. You told me it was ironclad. So tell me, Finley, how the hell did she do it? He blinked, set the coffee down on the reception desk. Come in, let's talk this through. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that a man in a pressed suit and dusty office could untangle this nightmare with a few phone calls, but I could see it in his eyes even then. The fear, the confusion, and under it all, a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. Guilt? Pity? He pulled out a thick folder from a locked cabinet, flipped through paperwork I'd seen once before but hadn't cared about then. It was just a house. 4 walls, a roof. My childhood. Nothing more. But now? It was everything. Eiling, he said, voice tight. Someone forged your signature. My mouth went dry. Forged. And you let it happen? He shook his head. It wasn't me. These papers didn't come through this office. They went to another solicitor, a young man up north, a Jordan Kershaw. Name ring a bell? No, it didn't. But the chill down my spine told me it would. I'll find him, I said. Eiling, wait, let's get the police involved. Then do it. But I'm not waiting for paperwork while Mia's rotting in a hospital bed because of some scumbag she owed. I'm getting my house back. I slammed the office door behind me so hard the windows rattled. Back in my car, I sat gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me. Wild hair. Shadowed eyes. I looked like Mum in her last days. Haunted, hollow. I drove to the hospital to check on Mia. She was awake, propped up by pillows, an IV snaking into her arm. She tried to smile when she saw me, her lips cracked. Hey, little bird. Don't you dare, I said, my throat burning. Who's Jordan Kershaw? Where is he? She blinked, eyes darting to the window like she expected him to crawl through it. Don't. He'll kill you too. Mia, look at me. She did. And for a moment, she was my sister again. The girl who used to make me midnight cocoa and tell me fairy tales when the thunder scared me. I'm going to fix this, I told her. You hear me? You're going to get better, and I'm going to fix it. She didn't answer, just turned her face to the wall and closed her eyes. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to crawl under the sheets and hold her until she was whole again. But there was no time, so I left. I pulled the door shut, the click echoing in my chest like a gunshot. I had an address. I had a name. I had nothing else to lose. And so it begins. And so it begins. I drove straight from the hospital parking lot without even thinking to grab a change of clothes or something to eat. The sun was just starting to rise. a watery glow that did nothing to warm the pit that had settled deep in my stomach. I could hear Mum's voice, gentle but firm, whispering all the things I already knew. You can't fix everything. You can't save everyone. But I had to try. I stopped at a grimy 24-hour petrol station, just off the motorway, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped my phone, trying to pull up Jordan Kershaw's address. Finley had scribbled it on the back of an envelope, 146 Hatherley Street, Annisford. A town I hadn't set foot in since Mum was well enough to take us on holidays by the sea, back when Mia still braided daisies into my hair. I filled the tank, bought a bottle of cheap coffee, and splashed cold water on my face in the cracked restroom mirror. My reflection looked worse than before, skin too pale, eyes ringed with bruised shadows. I didn't care. All I cared about was finding the man who turned my sister into a cornered animal. I found Annisford 3 hours later, a coastal town turned stale and gray. Once, this place had seaside charm, but now all I saw were shuttered shop fronts, too many "For Let" signs, and people who didn't look up from their phones or cigarettes long enough to wonder why a stranger was parking outside their street. Hatherley Street was the kind of road you'd miss if you blinked. A row of terraced houses, paint peeling off stone walls, bins overflowing with takeaway boxes and old newspapers. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching the front door of number 146. Red door, brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, cracked window taped up with brown parcel tape. I had no plan, no backup, no proof except my sister's broken voice and a solicitor's scribble. But anger makes you stupidly brave. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked harder, ignoring the way my heartbeat kicked against my ribs like a trapped bird. The door swung open so suddenly, I nearly fell through the threshold. He wasn't what I expected. Jordan Kershaw, if that's who this was, looked about 30, but the lines around his eyes made him seem older. He wore a suit jacket that didn't quite fit, the cuffs frayed like he'd chewed on them out of habit. His hair was slicked back, but the roots were greasy, and he smelled faintly of stale cologne. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth, practiced, like a solicitor greeting a client he already hated. I squared my shoulders. "You don't know me. My name's Eiling Wren. You forged my signature on a house deed." He blinked, then laughed, a short, sharp bark that made my fingers curl into fists. "I'm sorry, what?" "Mia Wren. My sister. She sold my mother's house through you. Except it was never hers to sell. You forged my name." His eyes flicked past my shoulder to the street. "Checking for witnesses? Or an escape route? Look, Ms. Wren. Ash." "Ash? I don't know what you think you know, but if you want to talk about alleged forgery, I suggest you hire a real solicitor. I have nothing to say." He started to close the door, but I shoved my foot into the gap. Pain shot up my ankle. I didn't care. "Who was the buyer?" I demanded. "Where's the money?" "My sister's in hospital because of you." He smiled, a thin, cold thing that made my skin crawl. "I'm sure she is. Now get off my property before I call the police." "You're going to jail, Jordan," I hissed. "You know that, right? Forgery, fraud, coercion. You're finished." His expression didn't change. If anything, he looked almost amused. "Is that what you think? That this is about me? You're not even close." He shoved the door hard. My foot slipped. The door slammed shut so violently I heard the letterbox rattle. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the lion's head knocker like it could give me answers. "You're not even close." I walked back to my car, my body trembling from the adrenaline crash. I sat behind the wheel, fingers drumming against the steering wheel, mind racing. If Jordan wasn't the mastermind, who was? Mia said she'd sold it for him. Was Jordan just the middleman? I looked up and saw a figure standing at the window on the second floor, just a shadow behind the grimy glass, watching me. I turned the key in the ignition and pulled away before I did something stupid, like throw a brick through his window. Back on the main road, I parked under a flickering streetlight and called Finley. He answered on the second ring. "Did you find him?" "I found him." He laughed in my face. He knows I have nothing. Finley sighed. The sound static crackled through my phone. Ash, we can get an injunction. Freeze any assets connected to the fraudulent sale. It'll take time. I don't have time. Mia doesn't have time. Who did he sell the house to? Finley hesitated. I'm working on it. The paperwork is muddy. Shell companies, offshore accounts. Whoever bought it knew how to cover their tracks. Then I'll find them myself. Eiling, please. But I ended the call. I didn't need another voice telling me what I couldn't do. The next few days blurred together. I split my time between sleeping in my car outside the hospital, just in case Mia woke up ready to talk, and pacing the hallways of government offices that smelled of stale coffee and despair. I pulled every record I could get my hands on. Land registry, housing sales, bank transfers. Most clerks didn't know what to do with me. A sleep-deprived woman with ink-smudged printouts and a voice that cracked every time she said the word forgery. I started piecing it together in a greasy spoon cafe near the railway station. My fingers smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee. But the paper trail didn't lie. The buyer wasn't just some faceless investment firm. It was a man named Callum Ridgway. I knew that name. Everyone in our town did. Callum was 3 years ahead of Mia and me at school. Even back then, he was the kid you crossed the street to avoid. Knife-edge smile, a pack of desperate hangers-on trailing behind him like rats. He left school before GCSEs to run errands for his uncle. Everyone knew the uncle was a big fish in the local drug scene. By the time we were old enough to go to pubs, Callum owned half the bouncers. He was poison, and he'd been circling Mia for years. My hand shook so badly I nearly spilled my coffee. Of course it was him. The pieces clicked together. Mia's frantic whispers about *him, the threats, the reason she was so scared to talk. Callum was the reason my sister sold me out, and the reason she was wasting away in that hospital bed instead of getting help. I didn't tell Finley. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I needed to see him. To look him in the eye and tell him I wasn't afraid. It was dark when I found him. Callum's office was a front, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, converted into a boxing gym that never opened its doors before midnight. I parked across the street and watched. Men came and went, tall, broad, their jackets bulging in ways that told me exactly what they carried. No one looked twice at my battered Honda. At 2 a.m., I got out, crossed the street like I belonged there, pushed through the heavy door. The smell hit me first. Sweat, stale beer, blood. The gym was a ring of flickering lights around a makeshift boxing ring. A few men sparred lazily, while others lounged on battered sofas, cigarettes glowing like fireflies. And there he was, Callum Ridgway, perched on the corner of the ring, lacing up his gloves like he was king of this rotting kingdom. He saw me immediately. His grin was all teeth and poison. Well, if it isn't Little Ash Rin, you come to join the club? I ignored the laughter from his cronies. I stepped closer, my fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. You bought my house. He feigned surprise. Your house? I thought it was Mia's house. Funny how she signed it right over. You threatened her. You forced her. He shrugged, hopping off the ring, rolling his shoulders like he might punch me for sport. Business is business, love. She owed me. She paid. I stepped so close I could smell the sweat and cheap whiskey on his breath. I want it back. You forged my name. That house was never hers to sell. He leaned in, lips brushing my ear. Then take me to court. But you'll lose. Or maybe you'll get lucky and your fancy solicitor will freeze my accounts. But by then, the house will be gone. New owners. Or maybe I'll torch it for fun. Make it worthless. His words sank into my skin like hooks. I wanted to scream, to claw at his face until that smug grin split in half. But I didn't flinch. I met his eyes. Dead, shark eyes. And I saw the truth. He wasn't bluffing. Before I could speak, he grabbed my wrist, squeezing until I thought the bones would snap. He leaned so close I could count the stubble on his chin. Run along home, Ash. Take your junkie sister with you. Count your blessings. I didn't take more. He shoved me back so hard I stumbled, crashing into a stack of old boxing gloves. Laughter followed me out into the night. Cruel, echoing, poisonous. I drove to the hospital without even remembering how I got there. I sat at Mia's bedside and watched her chest rise and fall. She looked so small under those sterile sheets, the sister who used to be larger than life, who used to protect me from everything that crawled out of the darkness. I held her hand, tracing the faint scars on her knuckles, the half-faded tattoo of a sparrow on her wrist. "I'm going to fix this," I whispered, "even if it kills me." I didn't sleep. I made calls. I dug deeper. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Callum wasn't just using my mother's house as collateral. He was laundering money through it. Shell companies, fake leases, tenants who didn't exist. He turned my childhood home into a ghost house for his dirty empire. And Mia? She was the perfect pawn. Broken enough to sign anything. Desperate enough to keep quiet. I thought about walking away. Selling my soul to a good solicitor. Letting the courts drag this mess out for years until maybe, just maybe, I'd see a penny of my mother's legacy. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom in her hospice bed, whispering my name. I saw Dad's back as he walked away for good. I saw Mia, 15 years old, blood on her face from a fight she'd picked to protect me from some schoolyard bully. I couldn't walk away. The next morning, I knocked on Finley's door before the sun was up. "We're gonna take him down," I told him. "Not just the house, everything." Finley looked at me like I'd finally gone mad. Maybe I had. "Do you have any idea what you're up against, Aisling?" I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. "A man who thinks he can take whatever he wants?" "Yeah, I know exactly what I'm up against." And I was ready to burn him to the ground. I meant it too. But meaning something and doing it are two different monsters. You think you're brave until you're standing in front of the thing that can swallow you whole. Then you find out what you're really made of. The first thing I did was move Mia out of that hospital. Not because they weren't trying, but because Callum's reach was long and I knew she was a loose end he'd happily tie up. The nurses gave me looks that said, "You shouldn't move her yet," but they didn't know Callum Ridgway like I did. I packed her into my battered Honda like she was made of glass, pillows bracing her head, old blankets wrapped around her shoulders. She was half awake, drifting in and out, mumbling my name between coughs that rattled her chest like loose change. There was nowhere safe for her. Not our old house. His house now. Not my tiny flat in the city. My landlord would have kittens if I showed up with an addict sister and a threat on my back. So I drove to the only place that made sense. Mum's best friend's cottage out by the woods. Anita had known me since I was 5. She'd braided my hair, mended Mia's scraped knees, held Mum's hand through every round of chemo. When she opened the door that day, she didn't say anything. She just pulled us both inside, closed the door behind us like she was locking the world out. She put Mia to bed in the old guest room with the lilac wallpaper, tucked her in like a child. Then she sat me down at her kitchen table, poured me tea I didn't want but held anyway, letting the heat seep into my shaking hands. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. All of it. The forgery, the warehouse, Callum's threats, the way Mia flinched every time I said his name. Anita didn't interrupt. She just listened, her lined face a mask of calm fury. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand so tight, I thought my bones would crack. "You're not doing this alone," she said. I wanted to argue, to tell her this was my mess, my fight. But the truth was, I needed her. More than I'd ever admit out loud. The next day, I called Finley from Anita's landline. He was knee-deep in paperwork already, drafting restraining orders, freezing any assets he could touch. But he was hitting walls everywhere. "Callum's too smart," he told me. "He's got everything under other people's names. He's been laundering money through fake tenants, subleases, renovations that never happen. The house is just one piece of a much bigger machine." I stared out the kitchen window while he talked, watching the rain streak down the glass. I could see Mia's silhouette in the next room, small and still under Anita's patchwork quilt. Part of me wanted to curl up next to her, pull the covers over my head, and pretend none of this was real. But I'd spent too long pretending. "Then we find the pieces," I said. "We rip his machine apart, bolt by bolt." Finley sighed like a man who knew he was in over his head but couldn't say no. "I have some contacts, people who owe me favors. Let me make some calls." When I hung up, Anita was standing behind me, a mug of tea in each hand. "You're going to need help," she said. "I have help," I said. "I have you," she snorted. "I'm 65, Ash. I mean real help. People who know how men like him operate." Before I could ask what she meant, she handed me the tea and disappeared upstairs, to check on Mia. I sat at her table, tracing the cracks in the varnish, feeling the weight of the house settle on my shoulders all over again. The deed might have had my name on it, but it was more than a house now. It was proof that Callum thought he could erase me, and by extension, my mother. And maybe that was the worst part of all. The next week felt like moving through fog and broken glass at the same time. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mum in her hospice bed, whispering, "Take care of your sister," as if it were the easiest promise in the world to keep. I spent my days on the phone with Finley, chasing paper trails through shell companies and tax havens. At night, I sat by Mia's bed, wiping sweat from her brow as she detoxed the poison out of her veins. Sometimes she'd wake up just long enough to tell me a half-remembered story about Mum, her voice small and broken. Other nights, she just screamed until her throat was raw. It was on one of those nights, when the rain hammered the roof and the wind rattled the windows, that Anita knocked softly on my bedroom door. "There's someone you need to meet," she said. I followed her down the narrow hallway to the front room. A man stood there, dripping rain onto the rug. He was older than me, maybe late 40s, with close-cropped hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen the inside of too many prison cells. "Eiling, this is Len," Anita said. Len used to work for Callum's uncle. Len gave me a nod, eyes flicking over me like he was cataloging every weakness. "I'm clean now," he said, as if he needed to say it out loud. 10 years dry. But I know how that snake works. Anita sat him down, handed him a towel. He talked while he dried his hair. How Callum learned the ropes from his uncle. How he'd built his network on blackmail and fear. How he kept everyone quiet with drugs, threats, or both. Len had been the muscle once. Good with his fists, bad with his conscience. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his eyes sharp as knives. "I want him gone," I said. Len smirked. "A lot of people want that." "I want proof," I pressed on. "I want whatever it takes to rip his life apart. Paperwork. Witnesses. Anything that ties him to that forgery. And to the house." Len leaned back, rubbing his stubbled chin. "You want to go up against him in court? You'll lose. He owns the police, the council, everyone with a badge. You want to win? You find the cracks in his armor. And you know where they are?" He gave me a slow smile. "I know where some of the bodies are buried." That night, we sat around Anita's kitchen table until the sun came up, plotting a war. One hadn't even known how to start the day before. Len told me about the warehouse's back rooms, where Callum stashed his fake leases and forged documents. He told me about the accountant, some poor kid named Marcus who cooked the books and kept quiet out of fear. When Anita went to bed, I stayed up with Len. He showed me old photos, grimy Polaroids of men I'd seen hanging around the warehouse, each one with a name and a weakness scribbled underneath. I took notes until my pen ran out of ink. .. By the next afternoon, I was standing outside a rundown flat on the edge of town, a box of pastries in my hand and a name in my head, Marcus Lee. He answered the door with a suspicious squint, his hair sticking up in greasy tufts. The smell of stale noodles drifted out to greet me. "I don't want any," he said, trying to shut the door. I jammed my foot into the gap, again, my poor toes paying the price. "You will when you hear what I have to say." He stared at the box of pastries like it was a bomb. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said. "I'm here to ruin Callum Ridgway." His eyes darted behind me, to the street, to the cracked hallway. "Keep your voice down." He let me in, but barely. The flat was a maze of pizza boxes and empty Red Bull cans. A single mattress sat in the corner, no sheets. I perched on an overturned crate. "I know you're his accountant," I said. "I know you keep the fake leases, the shell company files. I know you're terrified of him." Marcus laughed, a sound that was more wheeze than humor. "Terrified? You ever see what he does to people who talk? I'd rather slit my own throat." I opened the pastry box, pushing it toward him. He stared at it, then at me. "I don't want your bribe." "It's not a bribe. It's breakfast," I said. "You help me, I get you out. New name, new place, new life. You don't? He'll kill you anyway. You know that." He swallowed. I could see the gears turning, fear and hope fighting it out behind his bloodshot eyes. "You don't know him," he whispered. "I know he forged my signature. I know he turned my sister into a pawn. I know he thinks people like you are disposable. Marcus's eyes flicked to the pastries again. He grabbed one, stuffing it into his mouth like he hadn't eaten in days. Crumbs stuck to his stubble. I don't have much, he mumbled around the pastry. But there's a ledger. Names, amounts, transfers. It's at the gym. Locked in the back office safe. My stomach twisted. So how do we get it? He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes darting to the window like Callum might crawl through it any second. You don't, he said. You'd have to break in. Cameras. Dogs. His guys never sleep. I sat back, my mind racing. But you know the codes. Marcus didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. .. The next night, I sat in Anita's front room. Maps and photos spread across the coffee table. Len stood behind me, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You're insane, he said when I finished. Maybe, I shot back. But if that ledger is in that safe, it's the only proof we've got. Len leaned over, jabbing a finger at the blueprint of the warehouse I'd sketched on the back of one of Anita's baking sheets. You realize what happens if you get caught? Best case, they beat you to hell. Worst case, you disappear. I looked at him, really looked. Saw the scars on his knuckles, the faded tattoo on his wrist. He'd been where I was, maybe worse. So help me not get caught, I said. He sighed. Then he smiled. Sharp and dangerous. All right, little wren. Let's burn the nest. .. 2 days later, I was crouched behind a dumpster behind the warehouse, the stink of rotting food in my nose, the pounding of my heart so loud I was sure it would give me away. Len crouched beside me, whispering instructions into my ear. Dog handler takes a smoke break at 2:15. You've got 10 minutes. Cameras on the east corridor are on a loop. Don't get cocky. Cocky isn't my style, I whispered back. He gave me a look that said, liar. When the handler stepped out for his smoke, I slipped through the side gate. Marcus's stolen keycard clutched in my sweaty palm. Inside, the warehouse smelled the same as before. Sweat, stale beer, blood. The ring was empty, the lights dim. I crept down the hallway to the back office, my breath fogging in the cold air. I could hear voices. Callum's men laughing in another room, oblivious. I punched in the code Marcus had given me. The safe clicked open with a sound that made my knees go weak. The ledger was there, thick, battered, covered in greasy fingerprints. Names, numbers, forged signatures, property transfers, all of it. I grabbed it, shoving it into my backpack. I turned to leave, and came face to face with Callum Ridgway. He was blocking the door, arms crossed, that poison grin twisting his mouth. Going somewhere, Ash? I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the backpack straps. You shouldn't be here, he said, stepping closer, the smell of sweat and whiskey rolling off him in waves. You know what I do to little birds who peck too hard? I took a step back, my heel hitting the desk behind me. Nowhere to run. Callum. His hand shot out, grabbing my throat, squeezing just enough to make the edges of my vision blur. You think you're clever? You think you can take what's mine? My pulse thundered in my ears. I forced the words out through my crushed windpipe. It was never yours. His eyes flashed. Rage. Hunger. Something darker. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. Then watch what I do to your sister. He slammed my head against the doorframe. The world went black. The world went black. Or maybe it wasn't black at all. Maybe it was red, that hot, searing red that pulses behind your eyelids when you're somewhere between awake and not. Somewhere between alive and not. I heard the echo first. My mother's voice calling my name. But it wasn't real. Mom was long gone. That voice was the part of me that refused to die. The stubborn corner that clung to a promise. Take care of your sister. A cold splash hit my face. I jerked awake, sputtering. My head throbbed like someone was driving nails through my skull. I was on the warehouse floor, hard, slick concrete that smelled of oil and blood. A single overhead bulb flickered above me. I tasted iron and salt. Blood. I tried to sit up, but a boot pressed down on my shoulder, forcing me back. Callum squatted beside me, that shark grin plastered across his face like a mask. He smelled like stale whiskey and sweat. "Welcome back, little Ash," he crooned. "I thought you might stay under longer. But you're a fighter, aren't you? Just like your mom. Don't give him what he wants. Don't show fear." I locked my jaw, tasting blood from where I'd bitten my tongue. I forced my eyes to stay open. Callum picked up the ledger where it lay on the desk, flicking through the pages like it was an old family photo album. His fingers were smeared with my blood. "Do you even know what you're holding?" he asked. "This ledger is my masterpiece. Took years to build. Every dirty penny, every lie, every signature that keeps this place spinning. And you thought you could just walk out with it?" "I'm not the only one who knows what's in there," I croaked, my voice raw. "Take me out, it won't matter." He laughed. Short, barking. He stood, tossing the ledger to one of his men. "Search her, she's got backups. She thinks she's clever." Rough hands dragged me upright. I choked on my own breath as they tore the backpack from my shoulders, rifled through every pocket. They found the flash drive I'd hidden in my bra. Finley's idea. Always have a backup. Callum held it up between two fingers, like it was a worm he might flick away. Then he snapped it in half with a quick twist, letting the pieces clatter to the floor. "You think you're the first to try this?" he sneered. "Your sister thought she could blackmail me once too. Look where that got her." Rage burned so hot in my chest I thought I'd combust. "She's not your toy. You broke her." He grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet his dead, flat gaze. "She broke herself. I just gave her what she asked for." I wanted to spit in his face, but I needed him to underestimate me more than I needed that tiny satisfaction. So I let my eyes fill with tears instead. I let my shoulders sag. I let him think he'd won. Because I'd seen the safe, I'd seen the files. And Marcus knew more. Even if Callum killed me right here, tonight, someone else would keep pulling at this thread. Callum shoved me back against the wall so hard my shoulder screamed. "You're gonna go home, Ash. You're gonna kiss your sister goodbye. You're gonna thank your lucky stars. I didn't bury you tonight. And then you're gonna forget my name. You understand?" He nodded to his men. One of them slammed something hard into the side of my head. Darkness again. So quick this time, I didn't even feel myself hit the floor. .. I came to in the back alley behind the warehouse. My hands were zip-tied in front of me, the plastic biting into my wrists. My hair was damp with what I hoped was just rain. My phone was gone. My car keys, too. They'd stripped me of anything they thought mattered, but they were wrong. I was still breathing. And while I was breathing, I was dangerous. I rolled onto my side, coughing until the world steadied. My brain felt like it had been dragged over gravel, but I forced myself to sit up, then to my knees. I braced my wrists against the corner of a broken pallet, sawing at the plastic tie until it snapped. My hands burned. I didn't care. I staggered through the back streets, rain soaking me to the bone, until I found a petrol station. The cashier stared at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. He let me use the phone behind the counter. My fingers trembled as I dialed Anita's number from memory. She answered on the second ring. "Eiling?" I choked on her name. "They know. He knows. I need you." "I'm coming. Where are you?" By the time Anita's battered Volvo skidded into the car park, I was slumped against the vending machine, eyes half closed. She ran to me, bundled me into the back seat, wrapping me in an old wool blanket that smelled like lavender and mothballs. "I've got you, sweetheart," she whispered, voice fierce. "I've got you. .. Back at the cottage, I slept for a day, maybe two. Time blurred into one long smear of pain and dreams. I woke once to find Mia sitting at the foot of my bed, her hair pulled back in a messy braid. Her eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Ash." My throat felt raw, every word sandpaper. "Not your fault. Never was." She reached for my hand, her fingers still trembling from the shakes. "I didn't know he'd come for you. I didn't know he'd..." "Shh." I squeezed her hand. "Doesn't matter now. We're not done." Because we weren't. If anything, Callum's little show of force had only carved the word war into my bones. He wanted me to run? To hide? No. I'd come too far to back down. When I could stand without my head spinning, I found Len in the kitchen, frying bacon while Anita fussed over him like a mother hen. "You're lucky they dumped you," he said, not looking at me. When Callum gets spooked, people tend to disappear forever. He's not spooked enough, I snapped. I need that ledger. I need everything. Len slid a plate across the table. Eat. Then we plan. ... The next plan was simple on paper. Get Marcus out. He was our weakest link. Callum would crush him if he sniffed betrayal. So Len and I went back to Marcus's flat 3 nights later, under cover of rain that made the city streets shine like broken glass. He almost didn't open the door when we knocked. When he did, he looked like a man on the edge of a cliff. His eyes darted past us, down the hallway, into the shadows. He knows I talked. He hissed, dragging us inside. I saw one of his guys across the street this morning. He's going to kill me. Then come with us, I said. We'll hide you. But you have to give me something. Anything. Where else does he keep records? Marcus ran his hands through his hair until it stood on end. There's a flat, above the betting shop on Claymore Street. It's his drop spot. Cash, IDs, documents. But he doesn't keep it there long. Len's eyes met mine. We both knew what that meant. We had hours. If that. Get what you can carry, I told Marcus. Now. We bundled him into Len's car, tucked him under blankets in the back seat. Then Len and I drove to Claymore Street. ... Breaking into that flat felt like peeling my skin off. Every creak of the old stairwell, every groan of the floorboards made my pulse hammer so loud I thought I'd choke on it. The door was locked, but Marcus had given me a key. Sweaty, shaking fingers pressing it into my palm before we left. I slipped it into the lock, praying it hadn't been changed. Click. Inside, the air smelled of stale cigarettes and mold. A single bulb swung from the ceiling. The flat was empty, except for a metal filing cabinet and a battered suitcase on the floor. Len kept watch at the door while I rifled through the cabinet. Receipts. Fake IDs. Stacks of cash, bound with rubber bands. And folders. Dozens of them, each stamped with addresses. My house. 3 others I recognized from the council records I'd pulled. Each one a lie. Each one proof. I stuffed everything into a canvas bag, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. Let's go, Len hissed. Now. But I froze. There, at the bottom of the cabinet, was an envelope. My mother's name scrawled across it in blocky handwriting. Mum's name. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A loan agreement. Mum's signature, hers this time, real, I could tell. Callum's uncle's name at the bottom. A debt. A chain that never broke. Len grabbed my shoulder. Ash, move. I shoved the envelope into my jacket. We slipped back down the stairs, every step an eternity. When we hit the street, I felt a shift in the air. A car idling at the curb, its engine a low growl. Headlights off. Shadows inside. Run, Len said. But it was too late. The car doors flew open. 2 men in dark hoodies, boots crunching glass on the pavement. One lunged for me. Len stepped between us, fists flying. I bolted, the bag thumping against my side. I heard the crack of bone. Len's grunt of pain. I didn't look back. I ducked into an alley, slipped through a rusted gate into someone's back garden. The thud of boots behind me told me they were still close. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out. I crouched behind a shed, every breath a scream in my ribs. Footsteps, voices. Where'd she go? Check the garden. I held my breath. The bag of stolen proof was a dead weight in my arms. Then, silence. Footsteps fading. A car door slamming. The growl of the engine pulling away. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally crawled out, the sky was just turning gray with dawn. ... Anita's cottage felt like a church when I stumbled in. Mud streaked up my jeans, leaves tangled in my hair. Anita pulled me into her arms, her warmth chasing the cold from my bones. Mia was there too, sitting at the table, eyes wide and clear. She stood and took the bag from my hands like it was made of glass. "What did you do?" she whispered. I sank into the chair, every muscle trembling. I got us a war chest. Len limped in behind me, his face bruised, knuckles raw. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. She's got the heart of a lion. This one? I didn't feel like a lion. I felt like a ghost in my own skin. But when I laid out the documents on Anita's table, my mother's debt, the fake leases, the trail of laundered money, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. And as the first light of dawn spilled through the kitchen window, I made myself another promise. You can take my house. You can break my sister. But you will not bury us. Not without a fight. Not without a fight. Those words clanged around in my skull as the sun rose over Anita's cottage, staining the walls with pale gold that felt like a lie. There was no warmth in it, no comfort. Just another reminder that the world outside didn't care that my mother's house was gone, or that my sister lay upstairs coughing her lungs raw while I plotted to bring down the kind of man who'd burn us all for pocket change. I sat at the kitchen table, my palms flat on the mountain of stolen papers. My mother's name, my name, Mia's name, all tangled up with men like Callum, men who learned to twist love into debt and shame. Len leaned against the sink, pressing an ice pack to his swollen jaw. Mia sat across from me, her eyes clearer now but ringed with the ghosts of 1,000 sleepless nights. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, Mia cleared her throat. A dry, papery sound that still made me flinch. "Is that everything?" she asked, nodding to the folders. I glanced at the loan agreement with Mum's shaky signature, the fake leases, the lists of names. Tenants who never lived in the rooms, contractors who never laid a brick. All the paper ghosts Callum used to wash his dirty money clean. "It's enough," I said, even though I wasn't sure if it was true. "It's enough to tie him to the forgery, to the shell companies, to the house." Mia hugged her knees to her chest, her sweater sleeves pulled down over hands that still trembled. "He's not going to let you use it. He can't stop me forever. He'll kill you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll kill me too." A flash of the warehouse floor came back. Callum's boot on my shoulder, his fingers digging into my jaw. I shoved the memory away. "Not if we move fast," Len snorted, his split lip curling. "Fast is good, but you'll need more than paper. You'll need someone to listen." "Finley will," I said. Len's bruised eyes met mine over the rim of his mug. "One old solicitor can't fight Callum's reach. He's got coppers in his pocket, judges too. You need the press, a lawyer, a detective who still gives a damn. Do you know one?" He barked a laugh that turned into a wince when it tugged at his busted lip. "Yeah, one, but she hates my guts. Not without a fight." Those words clanged around in my skull as the sun rose over Anita's cottage, staining the walls with pale gold that felt like a lie. There was no warmth in it, no comfort, just another reminder that the world outside didn't care that my mother's house was gone, or that my sister lay upstairs coughing her lungs raw while I plotted to bring down the kind of man who'd burn us all for pocket change. I sat at the kitchen table, my palms flat on the mountain of stolen papers. My mother's name, my name, Mia's name, all tangled up with men like Callum, men who learned to twist love into debt and shame. Len leaned against the sink, pressing an ice pack to his swollen jaw. Mia sat across from me, her eyes clearer now but ringed with the ghosts of 1,000 sleepless nights. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, Mia cleared her throat, a dry, papery sound that still made me flinch. "Is that everything?" she asked, nodding to the folders. I glanced at the loan agreement with Mum's shaky signature, the fake leases, the lists of names, tenants who never lived in the rooms, contractors who never laid a brick, all the paper ghosts Callum used to wash his dirty money clean. "It's enough," I said, even though I wasn't sure if it was true. "It's enough to tie him to the forgery, to the shell companies, to the house." Mia hugged her knees to her chest, her sweater sleeves pulled down over hands that still trembled. "He's not going to let you use it. He can't stop me forever. He'll kill you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll kill me too." A flash of the warehouse floor came back. Callum's boot on my shoulder, his fingers digging into my jaw. I shoved the memory away. "Not if we move fast," Len snorted, his split lip curling. "Fast is good, but you'll need more than paper. You'll need someone to listen." Finley will, I said. Len's bruised eyes met mine over the rim of his mug. One old solicitor can't fight Callum's reach. He's got coppers in his pocket, judges too. You need the press. A lawyer. A detective who still gives a damn. Do you know one? And not without a fight. Those words clinged around in my skull as the sun rose over Anita's cottage, staining the walls with pale gold that felt like a lie. There was no warmth in it, no comfort. Just another reminder that the world outside didn't care that my mother's house was gone, or that my sister lay upstairs, coughing her lungs raw, while I plotted to bring down the kind of man who'd burn us all for pocket change. I sat at the kitchen table, my palms flat on the mountain of stolen papers. My mother's name, my name, Mia's name, all tangled up with men like Callum, men who learn to twist love into debt and shame. Len leaned against the sink, pressing an ice pack to his swollen jaw. Mia sat across from me, her eyes clearer now, but ringed with the ghosts of 1,000 sleepless nights. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, Mia cleared her throat, a dry, papery sound that still made me flinch. "Is that everything?" she asked, nodding to the folders. I glanced at the loan agreement with Mum's shaky signature, the fake leases, the lists of names, tenants who never lived in the rooms, contractors who never laid a brick, all the paper ghosts Callum used to wash his dirty money clean. "It's enough," I said, even though I wasn't sure if it was true. "It's enough to tie him to the forgery, to the shell companies, to the house." Mia hugged her knees to her chest, her sweater sleeves pulled down over hands that still trembled. "He's not going to let you use it. He can't stop me forever. He'll kill you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll kill me too." A flash of the warehouse floor came back. Callum's boot on my shoulder, his fingers digging into my jaw. I shoved the memory away. "Not if we move fast." Len snorted, his split lip curling. "Fast is good, but you'll need more than paper. You'll need someone to listen." "Finley will," I said. Len's bruised eyes met mine over the rim of his mug. "One old solicitor can't fight Callum's reach. He's got coppers in his pocket, judges too. You need the press. A lawyer. A detective who still gives a damn. Do you know one?" He barked a laugh that turned into a wince when it tugged at his busted lip. "Yeah, one. But she hates my guts." He barked a laugh that turned into a wince when it tugged at his busted lip. "Yeah, one. But she hates my guts." Back at the cottage, I sat on the creaky stairs outside Mia's room, the detective's words ringing in my ears. "Don't get comfortable." I could hear Mia coughing through the wall, the wet, rattling sound of lungs that had been dragged through hell. I wanted to go in, to sit on her bed and braid her hair like she used to braid mine. But I didn't know if she'd want me there. I didn't know if she'd ever forgive herself. Or me. So I stayed on the stairs until Anita found me, her wool dressing gown wrapped tight around her thin shoulders. "You can't do this alone forever, Ash," she said, her voice soft. "I'm not alone. I've got you. And Len. And Moran." "That's not what I mean." I lifted my head. Anita's eyes were watery, but fierce. "You keep trying to hold this house up on your back, like your mother did. But look what that did to her." I wanted to argue, but my throat closed around the words. She came and sat beside me, her arm warm around my shoulders. For a moment, I let my head drop onto her bony shoulder, the way I hadn't done since I was 12, and Mum first got sick. "You're not your mother," Anita whispered. "You're stronger. But you're still just one woman. Remember that. .. The next few days passed like a slow-motion brawl. Finley called every hour with updates, injunctions filed, bank accounts flagged, a few sympathetic council members willing to whisper about backroom deals. Moran worked the other side, pulling strings with old colleagues, leaking enough to the local papers that Callum's name started popping up like a bad rash. But the real fight was at the house. One morning I drove past it just to feel the wheels crunch on the old gravel drive, the place that was once my entire world. It looked so small from the outside, ivy choking the brick, the garden gate hanging on by one hinge. The curtains in Mum's old sewing room were half drawn, but I could see the flicker of a lamp inside. Someone was there. Callum's men, probably. Squatters, dealers, ghosts. My ghosts. I parked down the street and walked back, my keys clutched like a weapon between my fingers. The front gate creaked so loud I flinched, but no one came out. I stood on the porch, my heart beat a drum in my throat. I pressed my hand against the front door, the same door I'd pushed open 1,000 times before. The wood was cold under my palm. "Mine," I whispered. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough that the sun dipped behind the neighbor's roof. Long enough that my legs started to shake. I heard a noise behind me. Footsteps on gravel. I turned, expecting Callum. One of his boys. Maybe Moran. It was Mia. She stood at the bottom of the steps, hands jammed into the pockets of my old coat. She looked so small, but her eyes. God, they were Mum's eyes. Bright, stubborn, glassy with unshed tears. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you." She climbed the steps one by one, each one a question I didn't know how to answer. When she reached me, she took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone who could barely stand a week ago. "I want to see it," she said. So, I opened the door. Inside, the air was stale, sour with old food and stale smoke. The front room was trashed. Cigarette butts ground into the carpet, the mantel cracked where someone had kicked it in. Mum's old floral curtains hung limp and stained. Mia stepped past me, her fingers brushing the faded wallpaper. She moved like a ghost, touching everything but holding nothing. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that we'd get it back, that we'd scrub every stain from these walls and make it ours again, but I couldn't. Not yet. She turned to me, her chin trembling. "I want to fight too, Ash. Let me." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time since the day I found her curled up with empty pill bottles, I saw my sister again. The one who once shoved me behind her when Dad raised his voice. The one who taught me to spit back when the world tried to swallow me whole. "Okay," I said. "Then stand with me." We left together that night, locking the door behind us with my mother's old brass key. Dash, 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 ... Back at Anita's, we spread the last of the evidence across her kitchen table like a war map. Len traced lines from fake tenants to offshore accounts. Mia scribbled names on sticky notes, her hands steadier than mine. Anita brewed pot after pot of tea like we were still kids cramming for exams. And just before dawn, Moran called. "I've got something," she said, her voice hoarse with sleep. "Tomorrow? Town hall. Bring your papers. Bring your sister. If we're gonna sink him, we do it public." I felt the adrenaline hit me like a shot of cold air. How public? A rustle on the line, papers shifting, a low chuckle. "Let's just say the whole council's about to hear your family story." I hung up and looked at Mia. Her hair was falling out of its braid, her eyes wide. "You ready?" I asked. She nodded once. "For Mum." ... The next day dawned gray and raw, the sky heavy with rain that never quite fell. I wore my mother's old coat, the one she'd mended so many times I could trace every patch with my fingertips. Mia wore a scarf of Mum's too, wrapped twice around her neck like armor. We walked into that council chamber together. Two women who should have been broken, who should have run. We didn't run. I saw Callum the moment we stepped in. He leaned against the far wall, flanked by two of his boys, his grin all teeth and poison. He winked at me like we were old friends. Moran caught my arm. "Don't look at him. Look at them." She pointed to the row of local reporters setting up recorders, phones, notepads. One flash from a camera made my stomach lurch. Mia squeezed my hand so tight, I felt my knuckles pop. Finley was already at the podium, his voice steady as he laid out the forged signatures, the fake companies, the debt that haunted my mother to her grave. He passed the papers around like a funeral offering, and then it was my turn. I stepped up, my throat dry, my mother's coat warm on my shoulders. I could see the whole room. Reporters leaning in, Council members shifting uncomfortably. Callum's dead eyes boring holes through me. My mother raised us in that house, I began, my voice shaking only a little. She paid every bill, every loan, even when it broke her. When she died, she left the house to me, to us, so we'd have something. Callum Ridgway took that from us. A hush fell over the chamber, the kind that feels like thunder waiting to break. He forged my name, I went on, the words growing sharper. He forced my sister to sign it away. He turned our home into a front for his filth, and he thinks we'll just let him. I glanced at Mia. She nodded. We're not, I said. And in that moment, that single heartbeat of silence, I felt Mum at my back, her hands on my shoulders, steadying me. The same way she did when I was 6 and terrified of thunderstorms. Callum pushed off the wall, his mouth twisting into a sneer. He started forward, his goons flanking him, the swagger of a man who'd never heard the word no. But he didn't make it halfway before Moran blocked his path, badge raised, voice like iron. Callum Ridgway, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, money laundering, and intimidation. You have the right to remain. His shout drowned her out. A snarl, an animal sound. His men lunged. Chaos exploded in the council chamber. Chairs scraping, voices shouting, flashes popping. I saw Finley shield Mia with his body. I saw Moran's men wrestle Callum to the ground, his eyes locked on mine the whole time. And in that moment, when his voice broke on my name, when they dragged him past me in cuffs, I knew it wasn't over, because men like him don't break. They bend. They wait. I watched him vanish through the council chamber doors, his threat echoing behind him. And I swore to myself, and to my mother, I'd be ready. I'd be ready. The words echoed through my head long after they dragged Callum Ridgway out of that town hall in handcuffs. Even after the reporters stopped shouting questions, after the last camera stopped flashing, after the echo of the chaos settled back into that stale, musty air, I could still feel it, vibrating under my skin like something alive. You will not bury us. But Callum's sneer was still there too, stamped on my brain like a bruise. The way he locked eyes with me while Moran read him his rights. The way his mouth twitched into a smile like he already knew something I didn't. That was the part one couldn't shake. Mia squeezed my hand so tight my bones ached. She didn't say a word as we stood outside the council building, watching the marked cars drive him away. Len leaned against the stone steps, his arms folded, his eyes tracking every police car until they turned the corner. Finlay came up behind me, his hand light on my shoulder. You did it, he said. You did more than anyone thought you could. Did we? I asked, my voice raw. Finlay hesitated. Just enough to tell me he was thinking the same thing I was. That this wasn't the end. That a man like Callum didn't disappear just because the law said so. We made him bleed, Len said, pushing off the railing. Sometimes that's enough. I looked at Mia. Her eyes were tired, but clearer than they'd been in years. The fevered haze of withdrawal replaced with something harder. She nodded once. It's not enough. Not until the house is ours again. That was the point, wasn't it? All the papers, the forgeries, the shell companies, they were about more than just Mum's house. But the house was still the heart of it. A promise I'd made to a dying woman I loved more than life. ... We drove back to Anita's cottage with the smell of rain drifting in through the cracked window. Mia rested her head on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. It was the first time in years she'd leaned on me like that. The first time since we were kids that she didn't feel like a weight I was doomed to carry alone. When we pulled up, Anita was waiting on the porch, her old cardigan wrapped tight around her bony frame. She took one look at our faces and just opened her arms. We stayed that way. All three of us tangled together on the porch until the sun dipped behind the trees and the birds fell quiet. Inside, Moran sat at the kitchen table, her phone pressed to her ear. She didn't hang up when we came in, just waved us over. Yeah, she said into the receiver. No, he's inside. Charge him. And don't let him near a damn phone. His barrister will try to call in every favor he's got. She hung up with a sharp click and pinned me with her sharp gray stare. Congratulations, he's behind bars, for now. For now? Mia asked, her voice cracking. Moran shrugged, all steel and weary truth. Fraud's a slippery fish, girls. It'll stick if the judge isn't on his payroll. But Callum's had years to bury his secrets. He'll stall. Appeal. Bully. He's good at that. So what do we do? I asked. She pushed the folder across the table. Our folder, full of every scrap of proof I'd nearly bled for. You push back harder. You fight him in every office, every courtroom, every press release. Make his name poison. Len cracked his knuckles. I can help with that. Moran gave him a look that said, don't test me, but she didn't say no. No, why? Bay, .. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, calls with reporters, whispered promises from Finley that he'd chase every angle. My head felt too full. Names, dates, threats. Half the town glared at us now like we'd upended their quiet, rotten peace. The other half stopped me in the street to squeeze my hand, to whisper, good for you. I didn't trust either side. Mia tried to come with me to every meeting, but I made her stay back with Anita most days. She was stronger, but not strong enough for a war room. Sometimes I'd come back to find her curled up on the couch, a mug of tea gone cold in her hands, her eyes unfocused. She'd blink, smile at me like I'd dragged her back to the present. One night, I came home late from Finley's office. My shoulders were knotted so tight I felt like I'd shatter if anyone touched me. I pushed open the door to find Mia sitting at the kitchen table, a battered cardboard box in front of her. She looked up, her eyes shining in the warm light. I found this in Mum's old wardrobe, she said. I thought you'd want it. I sat across from her, pulling the box closer. Inside were scraps of our childhood. Polaroids of us on the front steps, birthday cards, old keys with little tags in Mum's neat handwriting. And right at the bottom, the deed. The original deed to the house, my name written so carefully it looked like a blessing. It's always been yours, Mia said, her voice cracking. Even when I ruined it. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. You didn't ruin anything. He did. She squeezed my fingers, a spark of the old Mia flashing in her crooked smile. Then let's ruin him right back. .. The next day, Moran called. He's trying to make bail, she said. His barrister's pulling every string they've got. If he walks, you're targets, do you understand that? Yeah, she said into the receiver. No, he's inside. Charge him and don't let him near a damn phone. His barrister will try to call in every favor he's got. She hung up with a sharp click and pinned me with her sharp gray stare. Congratulations, he's behind bars, for now. For now? Mia asked, her voice cracking. Moran shrugged, all steel and weary truth. Fraud's a slippery fish, girls. It'll stick if the judge isn't on his payroll. But Callum's had years to bury his secrets. He'll stall. Appeal. Bully. He's good at that. So what do we do? I asked. She pushed the folder across the table. Our folder? Full of every scrap of proof I'd nearly bled for. You push back harder. You fight him in every office, every courtroom, every press release. Make his name poison. Len cracked his knuckles. I can help with that. Moran gave him a look that said, don't test me, but she didn't say no. .. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, calls with reporters, whispered promises from Finley that he'd chase every angle. My head felt too full. Names, dates, threats. Half the town glared at us now like we'd upended their quiet, rotten peace. The other half stopped me in the street to squeeze my hand, to whisper, good for you. I didn't trust either side. Mia tried to come with me to every meeting, but I made her stay back with Anita most days. She was stronger, but not strong enough for a war room. Sometimes I'd come back to find her curled up on the couch, a mug of tea gone cold in her hands, her eyes unfocused. She'd blink, smile at me like I'd dragged her back to the present. One night, I came home late from Finley's office. My shoulders were knotted so tight I felt like I'd shatter if anyone touched me. I pushed open the door to find Mia sitting at the kitchen table, a battered cardboard box in front of her. She looked up, her eyes shining in the warm light. I found this in Mum's old wardrobe, she said. I thought you'd want it. I sat across from her, pulling the box closer. Inside were scraps of our childhood, Polaroids of us on the front steps, birthday cards, old keys with little tags in Mum's neat handwriting. And right at the bottom, the deed. The original deed to the house. My name written so carefully it looked like a blessing. It's always been yours, Mia said, her voice cracking, even when I ruined it. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. You didn't ruin anything. He did. She squeezed my fingers, a spark of the old Mia flashing in her crooked smile. Then let's ruin him right back. .. The next day, Moran called. He's trying to make bail, she said. His barrister's pulling every string they've got. If he walks, you're targets. Do you understand that? Brendan laughed, a wet, hollow sound. You think you're the first girl to stand here crying about what you lost? He owns you. Always did. Len's knuckles cracked. Brendan flinched. Talk, I hissed. He did. .. He gave us a name, Sasha Novak. An accountant Callum trusted more than anyone. The man who moved the last funds out of the dummy companies and buried them in offshore accounts. Brendan said she lived above a nail salon on the far side of town, a place I hadn't been since Mum used to take me for haircuts when I was 12. I pictured the pink awning, the peeling paint, the smell of acetone that made my eyes water. That was where the final thread lay tangled. We didn't tell Moran. We didn't tell Finley. I couldn't risk Callum's reach in the police. We went ourselves. Len driving, me in the passenger seat with the deed in my bag like a talisman. It was raining when we pulled up. Cold, steady sheets that blurred the streetlights into watery smears. The nail salon was shuttered. The neon open sign dark. A single light glowed upstairs behind a cracked curtain. Len handed me the old rusted revolver he kept under his seat. I didn't want it, but I took it. Go careful, little Ren, he said. People like Novak don't stay alive by being soft. .. I climbed the back stairs, each step groaning under my boots. My pulse thundered in my ears so loud I could barely hear the rain. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again. Louder. The curtain twitched. A shadow moved. The door swung open a crack, the chains still latched. I saw her then, Sasha Novak. Older than I'd expected, maybe 50, hair scraped back in a severe bun, glasses perched on her nose. She looked like someone's fussy aunt, except her eyes were dead black pools, calculating every inch of me in a single glance. You're not my appointment, she said, voice flat. I held up the deed. I'm Eiling Wren. You know why I'm here. A flicker of amusement tugged at the corner of her mouth. Do I? You hold the accounts. The last company that bought my house. I want it back. She laughed. A short, sharp bark that made my skin crawl. You want? Girl, you have no idea what you're playing with. I know exactly what I'm playing with. I reached into my coat pocket, my fingers brushing the cold metal of Len's gun. I didn't draw it. Not yet. But her eyes tracked my hand anyway. You're not scaring me, she said. Voice softer now, almost pitying. Callum's in a cell. He'll be out. And if he's not, someone worse will be. I leaned closer, my voice steady even though my knees felt like jelly. You help me fix this. You get to walk away. You keep covering for him. You go down with him. Her smile was all teeth. You're brave. Or stupid. Both, I said. Which is why you should be scared. We stood there. A young woman with a battered deed and a revolver she didn't know how to fire. And an accountant who'd sold her soul so many times it was threadbare. Finally, she unlatched the chain. Opened the door wider. Come in then, little Wren, she said. Let's see how far you'll really go. And I stepped over the threshold, the rain pounding the street behind me like a war drum. .. 9 of part 6. When you're ready, I'll pick up from that exact last word. No jumps, no rewrites. And we'll push Eiling's fight deeper, darker, and more unstoppable. I stepped over the threshold, the rain pounding the street behind me like a war drum. Inside, the flat smelled faintly of chemicals. Nail polish remover, old floor cleaner, something sharper I couldn't place. The room was small, cluttered with battered furniture and stacks of file boxes. A single desk lamp cast a pool of yellow light over a laptop, papers, and a chipped mug with lipstick marks on the rim. Sasha Novak closed the door behind me and turned the bolt with a quiet click. The sound made the hairs on my neck prickle. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a stained armchair by the desk. I hesitated just long enough to see that tiny flash of amusement in her dark eyes again, like a cat watching a mouse trying to decide which trap to spring. I sat. She perched on the edge of the desk, one foot crossed over the other, her arms folded. She looked so calm, so ordinary, but I could see the glint of something cold and sharp behind her eyes. "Do you know what I do for men like Callum?" she asked, her tone so conversational it made my skin crawl. "You bury the money." She tilted her head, lips curling at the edges. "I don't bury it. I resurrect it. I make it walk around in a suit and tie. I make it look clean enough for banks to clap me on the back while they pretend they don't know what they're holding." I felt the revolver under my coat, heavy against my ribs. "Well, you're done playing Undertaker. The house was my mother's. You know the deed is mine." She slid off the desk so smoothly I flinched. She walked to a cabinet in the corner and opened the top drawer. The sharp chemical smell got stronger. She pulled out a folder and set it down in front of me. "You think you're the first?" she said. "You think you're special because your mummy wrote your name on a bit of paper? Callum owns Judges. He owns Coppers. That deed means nothing if the money says otherwise." I flipped the folder open. Dozens of pages. All the same property. Mum's house. But each page showed a different buyer. Different amounts. Some names I recognized. Shell companies I'd chased for weeks. Some I didn't. "This is the paper trail," I whispered. She snorted. "It's asterisk, A-cup paper trail. The real one's digital. In here." She tapped her laptop with one sharp fingernail. My heart stuttered. "Then give it to me." Her eyes flicked to my coat, to the lump where Len's revolver sat hidden. "Going to shoot me for it, are you?" I hated how my fingers twitched, how my mouth went dry. She saw it. She leaned in, her breath ghosting my cheek. "Let me tell you something about people like me, little Ren. We don't keep our secrets in one place. You shoot me, you bury the key. I walk out of here with you. Maybe you live, maybe not." I forced myself to hold her gaze. "What do you want?" She straightened, smoothing the front of her blouse with those careful fingers. "Immunity. Witness protection. I give you the files. I want my slate wiped clean." I almost laughed. It came out more like a choke. "You think they'll do that for you?" She shrugged, like the idea of dying didn't bother her in the slightest. "You want your house. I want my skin. Bring me Moran. Bring me a promise." She turned her laptop so the screen faced me. A single file folder sat open. Ren_house_holdings. Password protected. I could see the list. Account numbers, offshore banks, shell company addresses. She closed the laptop with a snap. No promise. No files. The world tilted under me. Exhaustion, fury, dread all clawing at my throat at once. "You'd let him burn it all just to save yourself?" Sasha smiled. And this time there was no warmth. No pity. Just teeth. "Everyone burns for someone, little Ren. Who do you burn for?" I pushed out of the chair so fast it skidded back. My fists clenched around the edges of Mum's deed, crumpling the paper like it might bleed if I held it hard enough. "I'll bring Moran," I said. "But if you're lying, if you've got copies stashed to sell to his friends, I'll make you regret it." Her eyes flicked to my hand again, where the revolver made a faint shape under my coat. She didn't flinch. "Be quick then, my window's closing." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to know what she'd heard through whatever poisoned grapevine she crawled through. I turned, unlocked the door myself. The rain hit me like a slap in the face. Len stood under the street lamp by the car, his shadow stretched long and crooked across the wet pavement. "Well?" he called. I shook my head. "She wants immunity. Moran, witness protection." He barked a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Of course she does. And you think Moran can promise that?" "Do we have a choice?" Len's eyes glittered under the lamp. He reached into his coat, pulling a battered pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He lit one with hands that didn't shake, hands that had broken more bones than I'd ever touch. "I'll call Moran," he said. "You go sit in the car before you fall over. .. An hour later, we were back at Anita's. She poured me tea I didn't drink, the steam curling around my face like ghosts. Mia sat across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes flicking between me and Len like she couldn't decide which of us would break first. "You trust her?" she asked. Sasha sat at her desk, her fingers tapping the laptop's keys so fast it was like watching a magician shuffle cards. File after file bloomed on the screen. Receipts, bank transfers, emails that read like confessions scribbled on neon paper. Mum's house. 10 other houses. Cash that spun out from Callum's shell companies like rot spreading under floorboards. My hands shook. Len stood behind me, his bulk blocking the door, his eyes flicking to the street every few seconds like he expected death to knock next. "This is it," I whispered. "This gets the house back." Sasha didn't look at me. She turned to Moran, her lips curling into that cold, cold smile. "I want it in writing. Now." "Do I have to?" I shot back, my voice sharper than I meant. Mia flinched. I forced myself to soften it. "Sorry, we're so close. I can feel it. One more piece, and it's ours again." Mia reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, solid, stronger than I remembered. "Then we do whatever it takes, for Mum." Anita cleared her throat behind me, her kettle whistling on the hob. "And if this woman drags you under with her?" Len exhaled a cloud of smoke through the cracked kitchen window. "Then we hold our breath and keep swimming. .. Moran showed up the next morning, her battered car spitting gravel down Anita's drive. She walked in like a storm, hair damp from the drizzle, eyes burning. "You better not be wasting my time, Ash," she said, dropping her bag on the table. I handed her the folder Sasha had shown me. Moran flipped through it, her lips pressed tight. "This enough to bury Novak too?" "She wants out," I said. "She says she'll give us the rest. All the offshore files, the real accounts, if we promise immunity." Moran barked a laugh that held no humor at all. "The only thing I can promise her is a cell next to Callum's. But if she talks, maybe she does less time." Len stubbed out his cigarette in Anita's chip saucer. "If you scare her off, she burns the files." Moran slammed the folder shut, her knuckles white. "Then she better be more scared of me than she is of Callum. Get in the car. .. The three of us squeezed into Moran's car. Len in the back, me beside her, the rain drumming so hard on the roof it felt like the sky might cave in. I watched the street blur by, houses leaning into each other like tired drunks, pubs still shuttered from the night before. For a heartbeat, I thought about Mum, about her hands in the garden soil, her humming under her breath as she painted the windowsills in that soft butter yellow she loved. "Hold on, Mum, asterisk," I thought. "We're almost there. .. Sasha opened the door before we even knocked. She looked the same. Neat, severe, her eyes cold as a knife pressed against skin. She stepped back, letting Moran pass like they were old poker buddies meeting for a rematch. "Detective," Sasha said. "Sasha." Moran dropped her bag on the table with a thud. "Show me." Moran pulled out a battered notebook and a pen. "You get protection if what you give me holds up. But you're not walking. You're testifying." Sasha shrugged. "I'll be on a beach in 6 months. You'll see." She clicked her mouse, opening a hidden folder. A single document. "Final transfers. Wren House." She turned the laptop toward me. "Download it," she said. "Your fight. Not mine." My fingers hovered over the keys. My breath stuck in my throat. I plugged in the USB drive, the new one Finley had given me. I clicked save. Watched the bar crawl across the screen like the last mile of a marathon. When it hit 100%, I almost sobbed. "It's done," I said. But the relief lasted only a second. The sound of boots on the stairs outside snapped it like a wire under too much weight. Len's head snapped up. "Get back." The door exploded inward, splinters of cheap wood raining across the room. The first man through wore a ski mask, his eyes dead black behind the slit. The second one was bigger, a tattoo snaking up his neck like a vine. Len moved first, his shoulders slamming into the big man's gut. They crashed into the wall, the plaster cracking like brittle bones. Sasha screamed, a thin, inhuman sound. Moran grabbed her by the arm, dragging her toward the window. "Out! Now!" I fumbled for Len's revolver, but the masked man lunged. We slammed into the desk, the laptop clattering to the floor. His elbow cracked across my cheek. Stars burst behind my eyes. I heard Mia's voice in my head. "Don't let him win, Ash. Don't you dare." I kicked out, caught him in the knee. He staggered. Moran was shouting something, the window shattering as she shoved Sasha through first. Len and the bigger man wrestled in the hallway, a thud with every punch that landed. I scrambled for the USB drive, my hand closing around the tiny thing like it was a lifeline. The masked man grabbed my wrist, twisting until I thought the bones would snap. I slammed my head forward, felt cartilage crunch. He howled. I didn't wait. I ran through the broken door, over Len and the thug, who were still locked together like angry dogs. Down the stairs, the USB digging into my palm. Outside, the street was chaos. Moran had Sasha pinned to the alley wall, yelling into her radio. Sirens wailed somewhere far off. Too far. I stumbled to the curb, my breath raw in my throat, the rain washing the blood from my split lip. Len stumbled out behind me, one eye swelling shut, but still on his feet. I held up the USB. "I got it," I gasped. His split grin was all teeth and blood. Good girl. But I felt it. The shift in the air. The way Sasha's eyes darted past me. The way Moran's mouth opened to shout something I couldn't hear over the rain. I turned, and there, stepping out of a dark sedan that rolled up to the curb, was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad, slick hair plastered to his skull by the rain. He smiled. That same dead smile I'd seen on Callum. He lifted his hand. Something metal glinted between his fingers. I felt the world tilt, felt Len's hand on my shoulder. Too late. And then the street erupted in light. It was so bright I thought for a second the world had split open. A camera flash that seared into my eyes. A burst of noise that swallowed the thrum of the rain and the pounding of my heart. My ears rang, the smell of burning, or was it the acrid bite of a gun just fired? I didn't know which way was up, or if the light was outside me or inside me. All I knew was the weight that slammed into my side. Len. His shoulder hit mine so hard my knees buckled. The USB slipped from my hand. A tiny piece of plastic that felt heavier than the house, heavier than Mum's dying wish, heavier than every secret Sasha Novak had just tried to sell back to the shadows. I watched it spin through the air like a piece of confetti, landing with a soft splash in the gutter where the rain was already carrying the dirt of the street away. I landed on my back. The sky above me was a smear of neon and black clouds, the streetlight flickering in and out. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw Mum's face up there, the same face I'd seen every night since she slipped away, her soft hands squeezing mine. Don't let it break you, Eiling. Not you too. Len's voice dragged me back, a rasp, more breath than sound. Up, Ash, up. I rolled onto my side, pain pinwheeling through my ribs. He was half on top of me. Blood, blooming dark across the front of his coat. The broad man, the one with the slick hair, the gun still smoking in his hand, was backing away, his eyes flicking from me to the alley where Moran was dragging Sasha through the broken window. Sirens now. Closer this time, real and shrill. Len's hand fumbled at my arm, his fingers leaving smears of red on my sleeve. Go, he hissed. Go. Now. I grabbed the USB from the gutter. My fingers slipped on the wet plastic, but I didn't let it fall again. My eyes locked on Len's. His good one, the other already swelling shut. Not without you. He tried to laugh, but it came out a cough. Don't be stupid. I'm done. Get that to Finley. Get it to... A roar behind me. The slick-haired man was yelling now. Words I couldn't make out over the wail of sirens and the rush of rain. He turned his gun toward me. I felt the shape of Len's revolver under my coat. The same gun I hadn't fired when I had the chance. My hand flew to it, but Len's grip was on my wrist. Too strong. Too desperate. No more, he wheezed. Run. I ran. ... The alley swallowed me whole. The stink of bins, wet cardboard, diesel. I stumbled over a pile of rubbish, my boots slipping on the slick cobblestones. Behind me, I heard Moran's voice, barking orders, her boots thudding across puddles. Glass crunched under my feet as I rounded a corner, skidding so hard, I slammed shoulder first into the brick wall. Sparks popped behind my eyes. I kept moving. Somewhere behind us, tires squealed. The slick-haired man's car tearing off down the street with the engine howling like an animal. I didn't look back. I didn't care if he was coming for me or not. I had the file. I had the truth. I had to keep moving. Moran caught up to me halfway down the block, her hair plastered to her forehead, her breath a ragged rasp. She grabbed my arm, spinning me around so hard the USB dug into my palm. "Where's Len?" she snapped. I choked on it. The taste of iron in my throat, the bile rising with it. He covered me. I couldn't say dead. Not yet. Moran's eyes flicked to the street, where blue lights flashed off the puddles and broken glass. Her jaw tightened. "Get in the car," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Now." ... She drove like the devil was behind us, and maybe he was. I sat hunched in the passenger seat, the USB clutched so tight my knuckles ached. I could feel the storm in my bones, the thunder of it, the promise that none of this was over. We didn't go back to Anita's. Moran turned the car toward Finley's office. That tiny second-floor room above the florist, the place that smelled like stale coffee and ink and desperation. He opened the door before we even knocked, his face a mess of worry and exhaustion. His eyes went straight to my hands. "The USB? Is that it?" he asked, voice cracking. I nodded. I tried to speak, but the words stuck behind my teeth. He reached out, and for a moment I thought he'd take the drive and tell me it was done. But he didn't. He just pulled me into a hug that was all awkward elbows and the smell of old books and the dusty cologne Mom used to hate. "You did it, Ash," he whispered. "You did it." ... Moran stayed by the window, her eyes on the street below. Every car that passed made her shoulders tense. She'd called it in a bolo for the man with the slick hair. A full lockdown on the files Sasha had handed over before the bullets started flying. But I knew the truth in the pit of my gut. The reach was still there. Callum might be in a cell, but his arms were long, his fingers dirty with every secret we hadn't unearthed yet. Finley plugged the USB into his battered laptop. We watched the loading bar crawl across the screen, the same way I'd watched the rain crawl down Mum's hospital window that last night. Slow. Inevitable. Inside. The real transfer trail. Not just our house. 10 others, all tangled up in the same knot of ghost companies and false tenants. And there, at the end of it all, my mother's name. The signature she'd left behind when she was too tired to keep fighting, too sick to know what she was signing. Mia's name. My name. Finley leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "This is it. This is enough to get the injunction lifted. We can freeze the accounts, claw the house back." He looked at me like I should smile, like I should cry tears of relief. But all I felt was the weight of it. Len's blood on my sleeve, the echo of that gunshot in my skull. Moran crossed her arms. "We do this fast. Tonight, before he finds another rat to plug the holes." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. ... We spent the night in Finley's cramped office. Mia arrived an hour later, Anita at her side, her arm around her waist like she was the only thing keeping my sister from blowing away in the wind. When Mia saw the blood on my coat, she didn't flinch. She just pressed her forehead to mine, her breath warm on my cheek. "For Lynn," she said. "For Lynn," I echoed. ... The next few days were a blur of signatures, notaries, frozen accounts. Reporters called nonstop, their voices thin and crackly through Finley's landline. Headlines screamed, "Drug kingpin's empire cracks," and "Stolen homes, stolen lives." But every time I stood in front of a microphone, every time I held that deed up for the cameras, I felt the weight behind my ribs, the fear that we'd missed something, that the storm hadn't finished with us yet. Callum's face was on every front page, his name rotting under headlines about fraud and racketeering and forgery. But his eyes, the last time I'd seen them, those eyes were still in my dreams. Cold, hungry, promising. Mia and I stood in Finley's office the morning the council handed down the order. The house, Mum's house, was ours again. The final seal sat there on the thick legal paper, a cheap gold stamp pressed into the corner like a crown I didn't want to wear. Mia squeezed my hand so tight my fingers went numb. "We did it," she breathed. "We got it back." But I couldn't say yes, because I knew it wasn't over. You can't claw something back from a man like Callum Ridgway and expect him to just rot behind bars. He'd built his empire on ghosts. And ghosts don't rest. ... We went back that afternoon. Anita driving, because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mia rode in the front. I sat in the back, the deed pressed to my chest like a shield. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Ivy still clung to the crumbling brick. The windows still sagged in their frames. The garden was choked with weeds. But it was ours. Every creak of the floorboards, every scuff on the door, Mom had painted 3 times a year. We stepped inside together. The smell hit us first. Stale air, damp plaster, old secrets. I could almost hear Mum humming in the kitchen, the sound of her spoon tapping the mixing bowl. I could almost feel Dad's boots stomping up the stairs, the slam of the front door. Mia took my hand. We stood there in the hallway, the floor cold under our feet. "Do we fix it up?" she asked, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. "We fix it up," I said. "We make it ours again. ... That night, I slept in my old bedroom for the first time in years. The wallpaper was peeling, the bed frame was rusted through, but it felt more like home than the city flat I'd abandoned, or the countless sofas I'd crashed on while hunting for scraps of the truth. I dreamed of Mum. Her hands in the garden, her voice drifting through the open window. I dreamed of Len, his laugh, the way he'd called me Little Wren even when I felt like anything but... I dreamed of Callum too. The way his grin split his face when he realized I wouldn't run. The way he promised I'd never be free. When I woke, the house was quiet. Mia slept down the hall, her door cracked just wide enough for me to hear her soft, steady breathing. Anita had gone home to her own bed for the first time in weeks. Moran was probably sitting in her car 2 streets away, eyes scanning every shadow for the ones that would slip through anyway. I went to the kitchen. The deed sat on the table, the paper creased and stained at the edges. Battle-worn. I ran my fingers over my name. Nas Eiling Wren, Mom's handwriting. A ghost that would never leave. I thought about the file on Finley's laptop. The trail of rot that ran deeper than one house. One piece of property tied to 10 others tied to 20 more. Callum had been the rot, but he'd grown in good soil. A town that turned its face away, that let men like him bloom. A soft knock on the back door pulled me out of the spiral. I flinched so hard the chair legs scraped across the tiles. The knock came again. 3 soft taps. Careful, polite. I crossed the kitchen, every step heavy in my bones. I peered through the glass. Rain fell in soft sheets, blurring the garden into a smear of shadows. A man stood on the porch. Tall, broad, dark coat buttoned to his throat. His hair slicked to his skull with rain. When he saw me, he lifted a hand. Empty. Palm out. "Miss Wren?" he called, his voice muffled through the glass. "May I come in?" I didn't move. Every cell in my body screamed no, but my feet stayed rooted to the cold kitchen tile. "Who are you?" I shouted back. He smiled. Small, polite, the kind of smile you'd trust from a banker or a priest. "I'm a friend of Callum Ridgway's, and I think you and I should have a little chat about what happens next. ... I thought about the file on Finley's laptop. The trail of rot that ran deeper than one house. One piece of property tied to 10 others tied to 20 more. Callum had been the rot, but he'd grown in good soil. A town that turned its face away, that let men like him bloom. A soft knock on the back door pulled me out of the spiral. I flinched so hard the chair legs scraped across the tiles. The knock came again. 3 soft taps. Careful, polite. I crossed the kitchen, every step heavy in my bones. I peered through the glass. Rain fell in soft sheets, blurring the garden into a smear of shadows. A man stood on the porch. Tall, broad, dark coat buttoned to his throat. His hair slicked to his skull with rain. When he saw me, he lifted a hand. Empty. Palm out. "Miss Wren?" he called, his voice muffled through the glass. "May I come in?" I didn't move. Every cell in my body screamed no, but my feet stayed rooted to the cold kitchen tile. "Who are you?" I shouted back. He smiled. Small, polite, the kind of smile you'd trust from a banker or a priest. "I'm a friend of Callum Ridgway's, and I think you and I should have a little chat about what happens next. .. I think you and I should have a little chat about what happens next." I stared at him through the thin glass pane in the back door. He didn't look like the monsters I'd grown used to. No rough edges, no scars, no tattoos creeping up his neck. If I'd passed him on the street, I'd have thought he was a teacher. Or a bank manager. Someone who held doors for old ladies and smiled with all his teeth. But his eyes were empty. I knew that emptiness. I'd seen it in Callum's face, when he thought I couldn't fight back. I saw it now. The promise that nothing about this was over, that the rot went deeper than any court order or frozen bank account could reach. I didn't open the door. My fingers curled around the edge of the kitchen table, nails digging into the soft pine. Mom had stained herself when we were kids. My mother's house, our house, and yet here he was, standing on the porch like he belonged, like the lock was a polite suggestion. "Miss Wren," he said again, his breath fogging the glass. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to make sure you don't have any more problems." I could almost hear Mum's voice in my head. "Don't open the door for strangers, Ash." But I wasn't a kid anymore, and monsters didn't always knock. They kicked the door off its hinges. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "What do you want?" He shifted his weight, glancing behind him as if expecting a neighbor's curtains to twitch. "I think you know. Callum was important to certain people. He kept things running smooth. Now you've made that difficult." I let out a laugh that felt like it might crack my ribs. "You people act like I set out to ruin your little empire. All I ever wanted was my house." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "And look what that cost. Len Ellis, gone. Sasha Novak, in the wind. And your sister?" His eyes flicked to the hallway behind me. "You really think you can keep her safe now that Callum's inside?" My hand went to the revolver at my hip, the one that still smelled like cold iron and regret. He saw it. His eyebrows lifted just a fraction, like he was disappointed but not surprised. "I don't want to hurt you, Miss Wren," he said. "Truly. I just want you to understand there are bigger things at play. You've got the house back. Congratulations. Enjoy it. But the money? The files? Those belong to people who don't forgive." He slipped a card through the crack at the bottom of the door, the plastic scraping over the threshold. It landed at my feet, the ink smudged from the rain. "Think about it," he said. "Keep the house, keep quiet, or keep pushing, and find out what we do to little birds who forget how to stay in their nest." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading into the wet slap of rain on gravel. A car door slammed somewhere out front. An engine turned over, low and smooth, like a heartbeat too steady to be trusted. I sank to my knees on the cold tile, staring at the card. No name, just a number. A threat written in the language I'd come to know too well. "We own everything you touch. ... I didn't wake Mia, not yet. I didn't want her to see me like that. Shaking so hard my teeth clacked together, the edge of the table leaving half-moon indents in my palms. I sat there until dawn, the sun creeping through the torn lace curtains Mum had once fussed over. I wondered if she'd hate me for dragging our family back into this, or if she'd be proud. When Mia finally shuffled into the kitchen, hair mussed from sleep, she paused in the doorway. Her eyes went to the revolver on the table, then to the card in my hand. "Who was it?" she asked, voice scratchy from sleep, and too many cigarettes. I swallowed. A reminder that this isn't done. She slid into the chair opposite me, tucking her legs up under her jumper like she used to do when we were kids sneaking tea late at night. "So what now?" I turned the card over and over, the plastic cold and slick against my thumb. "We don't run." She barked a laugh. Rough, sharp. "Never thought you'd be the stubborn one. You either." We sat there a while, just two sisters at a scarred kitchen table in a house that felt like it was breathing with all the ghosts we'd tried to bury. We didn't say Mum's name out loud. We didn't have to. dash 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 dot dot. By mid-morning, Anita showed up with 2 carrier bags full of groceries, and the same no-nonsense frown she'd worn when she used to scold us for playing football in the front garden. She took one look at the revolver, the card, the half-empty mug of tea in my trembling hands, and she didn't ask questions. She just put the kettle on. "You look like a ghost," she said, setting out biscuits in Mum's old tin. "Feels like it, too." She sat beside me, her hand warm on my knee. "You know you don't have to hold this alone." Mia snorted from the sink where she was rinsing mugs. "Good luck telling her that." Anita ignored her. "You've done enough, Ash. You fought. You won the house. Maybe it's time to let the rest go." I looked at her, really looked at the lines around her eyes, the worry she wore like another jumper over her shoulders. She'd been Mum's best friend, her fiercest defender. But Anita had always believed you didn't poke the bear if you could slip past it instead. "There is no letting go," I said. "They'll come for us again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But they'll keep circling until we make them bleed." Anita sighed, not a sound of defeat, but the sigh of a woman who'd seen enough to know how much it would cost me. Dash 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 dot dot. That afternoon, I took the bus into town. No car? Too easy to trace. Mia begged me not to go, but I left her with Anita, swearing I'd be back before sunset. The solicitor's office was 2 streets off the main drag, above a chippy that smelled of vinegar and stale oil. Finley was waiting, hair rumpled, tie askew, a fresh stack of papers on his desk. "You look like hell," he said. I sank into the chair across from him, the card pressed flat between my palm and my thigh. "I need you to run a number for me." He hesitated. "Ash, if they're already threatening you, maybe it's best." I slammed my hand on the desk. "Run. It." He flinched, but didn't argue. He typed while I chewed the inside of my cheek raw. When the results came back, I felt the room tilt under me. The number linked back to a business park 2 counties over. An import-export front. Perfectly legal on paper. But Finley's contacts knew the name behind it. Andrew Gale. Callum's cleaner. A man whose hands never touched the dirt, but whose accounts bled into every dirty deal that had propped up Callum's empire for over a decade. "He's not bluffing," Finley said quietly. "He's the contingency plan." "Then we dig him up," I said. "We tear out the roots." Finley rubbed his eyes. "Ash, you've got the house. That's what you wanted." I laughed. Too sharp, too close to a sob. "It's not enough. Not if they come back for us. Not if they make it so. This was all for nothing." Finley was silent a long time. Then he reached for his phone. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "A friend in fraud. She owes me. She'll hate this, but maybe she hates men like Gale more. Dash 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 dot dot." I left the office an hour later with a new name on my list. A detective named Penny Cook, based in the next town over. I didn't know her face. I didn't know if she'd laugh me out of her station. But she was my next step. The next stone in the path I'd been laying since the day Mum took her last breath. Outside, the town smelled like rain and chip grease and old hope. I pulled my coat tight around me and kept my head down, feeling every stare like a needle through my ribs. Part of me wondered if everyone could see it. The ghost clinging to my shoulders, the stain of Callum's name pressed into my skin like a bruise that wouldn't fade. The bus ride home felt longer than the walk into hell. I sat by the window, the card in my palm, the number etched into my bones. I closed my eyes and saw Mum, her hands in the garden soil, her humming under her breath. And Len, his laugh echoing from somewhere I couldn't reach. I promised them both, I will not run. Dash 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 dot dot. Back at the house, Mia was on the porch when I stepped off the bus. She lit up when she saw me. That quick flash of the sister I'd grown up with before all the poison sank into her veins. "You're alive," she said, mock serious. "Barely." We sat on the top step, our shoulders pressed together like we used to do when we were kids, whispering secrets we never thought we'd have to keep. Mia nudged my leg with her knee. "You know you can stop. Right now, if you want." I looked at her, at the half-healed track marks, the new weight in her cheeks that said she was eating again, sleeping again, dreaming again. For the first time in years, she looked like my sister, and not some ghost I was failing to save. "Do you want to stop?" I asked. She snorted. He sold my shame for pocket change. I want him gone. Then we don't stop. She grinned, all teeth and stubbornness. Good. I'd hate to think you got soft. Dash, 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 dot, dot. That night, the wind rattled the windows like a warning. I lay in Mum's old bed, the smell of dust and lilac clinging to the sheets. Every time the house creaked, my hand flew to the revolver under the pillow. I wondered if I'd ever sleep easy again. Somewhere past midnight, I heard Mia's door open, bare feet on the landing, a soft knock. I rolled over as she slipped into the room, her hair a tangled halo around her tired face. Couldn't sleep, she whispered. Me neither. She crawled onto the bed, curling into my side like she used to when thunderstorms made her cry. I held her tight, my palm pressed flat over her ribs, feeling her heartbeat thrum steady and strong. We're gonna be okay, she murmured. Yeah, I lied. We are. Dash, 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 dot, dot. I called Detective Penny Cook the next morning from the payphone outside the corner shop where Mum used to buy our sweets. The phone smelled like stale cigarettes and old rain. My voice shook, but I made myself say the words. I have proof of money laundering bigger than Callum Ridgway. I need protection. For my sister. For myself. Silence crackled down the line. Then a voice. Brisk, clipped, more tired than I expected. Where did you get my number? I told her. The solicitor's friend. The files. The threats. Gail's name. Another pause. Come in tonight. And don't bring the originals. Not yet. Dash, 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 dot, dot. I didn't tell Mia until dusk. She didn't flinch. She didn't beg me not to go. She just took my face in her hands and said, Don't come back empty. I wanted to promise I wouldn't. But I'd learned by now. Promises are cheap. What matters is the fight. Dash, 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 dot, dot. I rode the bus alone again. This time I sat by the emergency exit, my fingers drumming the cold glass. Every streetlight that flickered past felt like it might be hiding the next threat, the next man who'd slip a card under my door and remind me that ghosts don't sleep. When the bus hissed to a stop near the police station, I stepped out into a cold wind that cut through my coat. The station squatted behind a cracked car park, its windows glowing a sickly yellow. It felt like the belly of something big and tired, too old to care about girls like me. Detective Cook met me at the front desk. She was shorter than I expected, wiry, with cropped gray hair and a mouth like a knife edge. Her eyes flicked to my hands, the folder clutched so tight the paper bent under my fingers. You bring the goods? She asked, voice low. Copies, I said. She snorted. Smart girl. She led me to a tiny interview room that smelled like stale coffee and cheap bleach. I sat in a hard plastic chair, my knees bouncing, my breath coming shallow. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Callum, the forged deed, the shell companies, Len's blood on the street, the man with the dead smile who knocked on Mum's door like a neighbor dropping by for sugar. When I finished, she leaned back, her chair creaking. She steepled her fingers under her chin. You know what you've got here? She asked. My house. She barked a laugh that was more pity than humor. No, sweetheart. You've got the tip of the dirtiest iceberg I've seen in 15 years. Gail's not bluffing. He's been using Ridgway to funnel cash out for someone bigger. You tug that thread, you're gonna be pulling corpses out of the walls for years. I felt my stomach twist. So what do I do? She leaned forward, her eyes so sharp I felt them slice straight through my ribs. You go home. You lock your doors. You get ready to bleed. Because men like Gail? They don't just knock. They blow the house down. Dash, 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 dot, dot. When I left the station, the wind had teeth. I pulled my coat tight, my footsteps echoing too loud in the car park. I didn't see the car until the headlights flared. Blinding, white, pinning me like a moth under glass. The engine growled, low and hungry. I turned, my boots slipping on the wet tarmac. A door slammed. Footsteps behind me. A voice. Calm, polite, so familiar it made bile rise in my throat. Miss Wren. I turned. Andrew Gale stood under the streetlight, his smile smooth as glass. Ready to chat again? Ready to chat again? His voice floated through the cold air like a snake curling under a door. Soft, polite. It was always the polite ones that bit hardest. I stood there in the car park, the puddles reflecting the streetlight overhead like shards of glass scattered at my feet. My breath misted in the air. I tasted copper at the back of my throat. Old fear I'd chewed for so long it tasted like iron now. Andrew Gale stepped closer. His coat barely rippled in the wind, his shoes spotless, even though the car park was streaked with oil and rain. Everything about him was too neat. The salt and pepper hair combed back, the sharp line of his jaw, the thin silver watch peeking out from his sleeve. The kind of man who could step over a body and never scuff his shoes. I didn't run. Where would I go? The police station was behind me. But we both knew walls meant nothing to men like him. Leave me alone, I said. It came out thin, breathless, pathetic. Gale smiled, all sympathy and empty eyes. Now, Miss Wren, we both know it's not that simple. He gestured behind him. Two shapes leaned against his car, broad-shouldered, faces half hidden in the dark. One of them flicked ash from a cigarette, the tiny orange glow flaring like a warning. I wanted to scream for Cook, to run back inside and slam the reinforced glass door behind me. But my feet stayed planted on that slick tarmac, my heart jackhammering under my ribs. You've been busy, Gale went on. Files handed over. Stories in the press. Callum in his nice little cell. Looking forward to a long vacation in prison stripes. I forced my chin up. He deserves worse. Gale chuckled. A quiet, pitying sound. Oh, he does. But you've made this messy. You've made me visible. That's not good for either of us. He closed the space between us in 3 calm steps. I smelled rain on his coat, expensive cologne, the faint sour note of something rotten underneath. You think you're different, he said softly, that you'll stand your ground, that you won't get bought or buried. I tried to answer, but my throat stuck. I thought of Mum's voice. Take care of your sister. Len's last breath. Run. My feet wouldn't listen. Gale's smile faded. He leaned in so close I could see the pores on his nose, the cracked lines in his lips. Listen carefully, he murmured. You've won your house. That's your fairy tale ending. Walk away now, and maybe you and your sister grow old and boring, and no one drags your bodies out of the marsh. Keep poking around? Keep playing hero? He shrugged, that polite mask slipping just enough to show the wolf beneath. Little birds make nice trophies. Something in me snapped. I shoved him back, my palms connecting with his chest so hard he staggered. The men by the car straightened, but Gale just laughed. A bright, sharp sound that bounced off the car park walls. There it is, he said. That backbone Callum liked so much. I see why you worried him. I glanced over his shoulder, the shadows shifting as the 2 goons took a step forward. Stay away from my sister, I said. I hated how my voice cracked. Hated how small it sounded. Gale Tsked. Miss Wren, your sister is the least of your worries. Look around you. You think you're the first girl with a sob story and a piece of paper? You're not. The difference is, you had the gall to drag it into the light. He leaned forward again, his lips near my ear. And the light is where you burn. A shout snapped both our heads around. Cook. Detective Penny Cook was striding across the car park, coat flapping, a hand on her sidearm. Her boots slapped puddles into silver arcs. What the hell is this? She barked. Gale, get back in the car. Gale's mask dropped right back into place. He turned, all polite nods and calm steps. Detective Cook. Good evening. Don't detective me, she snapped. If you're here to talk, you do it with my badge in your face. Gale gave me one last glance, a tiny lift of his brows that said, this isn't over asterisk, then slipped behind the wheel of his sedan. The engine purred like a big cat's throat. He pulled away, his goons melting into the shadows of the back seat. Cook stood next to me, her breath steaming in the cold. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me. Really looked. Then jerked her head toward the station door. "Inside," she growled. Inside, the station felt smaller than before. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the walls a faded gray that sucked the color from Cook's sharp eyes. She dropped into the chair across from me, her elbows braced on her knees. "You want to tell me why the hell you were out there alone?" she asked. "He was waiting. That man has half the force on his payroll. You think he just shows up to asterisk talk?" I flinched. I hated that she saw it. Hated that the tremor in my hands gave me away. "He told me to stop," I said. "He said I'd won enough, that if I kept digging—" I stopped. The words tangled in my teeth. What was left to say? That I believed him? That I knew he could keep every promise Callum hadn't lived long enough to fulfill? Cook rubbed her eyes. "You think you're the first. You're not. But you might be the first stubborn enough to push this far." She leaned back, her chair creaking. "You still want this?" I pictured Mum's garden, the daffodils she planted every spring, the smell of damp soil under my fingernails. I pictured Mia in the kitchen, her hair tied up with Mum's old scarf, laughing at nothing like she was allowed to now. I pictured Len, the way his eyes softened when he called me Little Wren. "I want it," I said. Cook barked a laugh. "More disbelief than humor." "Then you're a fool. But you're my kind of fool." She pulled a battered folder from her bag and dropped it on the table. The papers inside looked older than my mother's will. Grainy photos, names scribbled in tight, neat ink. "Gale is bigger than Ridgway ever was," she said. "Old family money. Offshore accounts. Political handshakes. You think you can take him down with a press conference and a sob story?" I said nothing. She shoved the folder closer. "You'll need more. You need a confession. A body. A trail they can't torch." I swallowed. "How?" Her grin was sharp as a blade. "You bait him. ... That night, I sat in Mum's old room, the folder open across the quilt she'd pieced together from our old clothes when we were kids. Every page felt like it hummed under my fingertips, a map of rot that ran deeper than I'd ever dreamed. Gale was there, his name tucked between a charity foundation and a shipping company. Faces I didn't know. Men who'd loaned Callum money, who'd laundered his filth for pennies on the pound. Mia knocked once before pushing in. She perched on the edge of the bed, her eyes tracing the photos over my shoulder. "This is bigger than the house," she whispered. "Always was." She didn't say, "Stop." She didn't say, "I'm scared." She just brushed my hair back from my face like she used to when I'd wake up crying from nightmares. Her fingers were warm, steady. "You're not alone," she said. "You hear me, Ash? Not anymore." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been born alone into this fight, that I'd die alone if it meant she didn't have to. 2 days later, we laid the trap. It felt absurd how easy it was to push a rumor into the right ear. Gale's men watched me like hawks, but that was the trick. They watched. They didn't see. I dropped hints at the cafe near Finley's office, whispering about a file I hadn't handed over yet, AUSB with the last piece. Something that would ruin the council boys, lining Gale's pockets. I let the waitress overhear. I let the bloke behind me at the queue see me slip a flash drive into my coat pocket. Len would have laughed at how sloppy it was. He would have told me I'd get my teeth knocked out for being so obvious. But that was the point. By dusk, I felt them trailing me, a car idling too long across the street. A man leaning on a lamppost outside the Chippy, tapping at his phone but never looking down. I led them back to Mum's house. My house. The front steps slick with evening rain. Inside, Mia sat at the kitchen table, her eyes darting from the window to the revolver on the counter. "They're here," she said. "Good." She laughed, a thin, brittle sound that made my heart twist. "We're mad." Maybe. Dash 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 dot dot. Cook waited 2 streets over, in an unmarked car, her phone open on the seat beside her. The line to the backup team crackling with every heartbeat. She'd wanted to be closer, but she'd taught me the truth. Trust a snare to work, only if you don't stand on the trap yourself. I checked the fake USB in my pocket, blank but dressed up with enough fake labels to fool a man who thought a poor girl couldn't fake anything. I pictured Gail's face when he realized he'd come for a ghost. I pictured Mum's voice. Don't let them make you small. Dash 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 dot dot. The knock came at 10:30. 3 sharp raps on the back door, just like Gail's last visit. But it wasn't Gail on the porch this time. It was the slick-haired man from the car park, the dead-eyed hound that had dragged Len into the alley that night. He smiled when I opened the door, his teeth small and neat. "Miss Wren, boss wants a word." "I'm not dressed for visitors." He shrugged, stepping forward until the doorframe dug into my side. "Not really a request, love." I felt Mia's shadow at my back, her breath warm on my neck. She slipped the revolver into my hand. My fingers closed around it so tight they cramped. "I'll come," I said. "Just me." Mia's fingers brushed my wrist. One last squeeze. I felt it like a heartbeat under my skin. Dash 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 dot dot. They took me in a black car that smelled like stale air freshener and damp leather. No one spoke. The city blurred past the rain-spattered window. All neon signs and shuttered windows. A town that didn't care who went missing in the dark. They brought me to an old office building near the river. 5 floors of broken windows and peeling paint. Gail waited on the top floor, standing by a boardroom table that looked like it had been dragged in from a skip. He smiled when they shoved me into the chair. "Miss Wren," he said. "What a waste of a good story." I forced a laugh. "Bit early for a eulogy, isn't it?" His eyes flicked to the USB in my coat pocket. "You've been busy." "You know me," I said. "Always poking the bear." Gail circled the table, fingers drumming on the battered wood. "You're smarter than Ridgway ever gave you credit for. But stubbornness isn't a plan." "I think it's working so far." His smile slipped. "You have no idea how deep this goes. You think you've seen filth? This is rivers of it, girl. Oceans." He leaned forward, his breath sour with mint and old fear. "Give me the drive." I tossed it across the table. A tiny clatter in the cavernous room. His goon snatched it up, slipped it into a laptop so old it wheezed when it booted. I watched the screen flicker. Watched his eyes narrow. "What's this?" he snapped. "Nothing," I said. "Exactly what you're going to have when this is over." His hand lashed out, fingers digging into my jaw so hard my teeth rattled. He leaned close, his lips a snarl against my cheek. "You think you've won because you've got your mother's rotten old house? You haven't won anything." I tasted iron, old blood under my tongue. "Then why are you here, Gail? Why not let me rot?" He paused, just a flicker. Enough for me to see the truth. He was scared. Not of me, but of what I might still know. Of what I might still drag into the light. The door behind him slammed open. Boots thundered across the floor. Gail turned, but too late. Cook's voice boomed off the concrete walls. "Andrew Gail, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice." He lunged. I felt the cold barrel of his pistol press against my forehead. The room tilted. The world narrowed to the click of a hammer being pulled back. "You'll never keep it," he snarled. "The house, the truth. You'll choke on it." My voice shook, but I spat the words out anyway. My mother's ghost behind every syllable. I'd rather choke than crawl. The last thing I saw was Cook's eyes, wide, furious, and the flash of muzzle fire lighting up Gail's dead smile. Oh, her belt. Her breath puff, "I'd rather choke than crawl." The words hadn't even finished tearing out of my throat when the flash came, white and hot and loud enough to swallow the world. My ears rang like a fire alarm trapped in my skull. My eyes slammed shut on instinct. All I could taste was metal, blood, and the sharp sting of my own fear. For a heartbeat, I thought it was me, that Gail had pulled the trigger, that my mother's house, my mother's everything asterisk, would be the last thing I ever fought for. But when I cracked my eyes open, the world was still here. So was I. So was Gail, though he was on the floor now, his pistol skidding across the cracked concrete. Cook stood over him, arm outstretched, the barrel of her sidearm still smoking. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alive. Flint and fire. Gale was still breathing, cursing, low and wet, one hand pressed to the wound blooming dark and sticky under his ribs. Cook kicked the pistol across the room. "Don't move, you piece of filth." He spat blood on the dusty floorboards, his eyes cut to me, still tied to that battered office chair. And for the first time, I saw something real flicker in those eyes. Not fear exactly. Resignation. The sick, quiet knowing that men like him are only kings until someone bigger rips the crown away. "You think you've won?" Gale rasped, his breath bubbling at the edges. "It won't change a thing. You'll dig out one root and 10 more'll sprout." I didn't flinch. I'd run out of flinches a long time ago. Maybe. But I'll keep digging. I'll dig till you're nothing but a stain. He laughed. A rough, broken sound that twisted into a cough. "You're your mother's girl. I'll give you that." Cook barked at her team outside the door. Boots thudding in, radios crackling. I let the noise wash over me like rain on a roof. Gale's words clung to me, sticky and sour. "Your mother's girl. Damn right I was. .. They loaded him into an ambulance. He'd live for now. Long enough to see the inside of a courtroom. Long enough to choke on every secret he'd buried in cheap office buildings and half-burnt ledgers. I watched through the cracked window as they shut the doors. The blue lights made the broken glass glow like stained glass in a ruined church. Cook stood beside me, arms crossed, her badge clipped TD white in the freezing night. "You all right?" she asked. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or sleep for a week, and wake up in a world where my mother's house had never been a pawn on some rotted game board. Instead, I said, "Ask me tomorrow." She smiled. A quick flash of teeth that was gone just as fast. "You did good, Ren. You did better than good." I flinched at my own name. So did she. "Go home," she said. "Stay close to your sister. Let the system do its job for once." "You trust it?" I asked. She shrugged. "I trust people like you to keep punching it in the throat when it stops. .. They drove me back in an unmarked car, a box of warmth that smelled like stale takeaway and old receipts. I leaned my head against the window, my breath fogging the glass. Outside, the city rolled by in smears of neon and fog. It didn't feel like my town anymore. Maybe it never had. When they dropped me at the end of Mum's Road, I got out without a word. The street was dead quiet. The kind of hush that only comes when the world knows it's held its breath too long. Our house glowed at the end of the street. One window warm, the curtains drawn back just enough for me to see the shape of Mia's head bent over the kitchen table. I walked up the path, gravel crunching under my boots. Every step felt heavier than the last, like my legs had finally remembered how much they'd carried. The front door swung open before I touched the knob. Mia stood there, hair mussed, eyes wide, Anita just behind her, clutching her dressing gown shut at the throat like she was holding in her heartbeat. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. Mia stepped forward, pressed her forehead to mine like we were kids hiding from Dad's shouting all over again. "Tell me it's over." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. ... We sat up till dawn at the kitchen table, the three of us. The same table Mum used to scrub raw when she was angry, her hands pink and cracked. We drank tea that went cold before we could finish it, ate toast that tasted like cardboard. Anita kept looking at the front window like she half expected Gale's ghost to come rattling up the path. Mia sat with her knees pulled to her chest, the old scarf of Mum's looped twice around her neck like armor. "You did it," Anita said at one point, her voice sharp, brittle. "You did what no one else could." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt hollowed out. My house was warm again. The paper in the council files said it was mine. But the ghosts were still here, clinging to the peeling paint, the hairline cracks in the skirting board. Callum, Gale, Len, Mum. I kept seeing Len's grin. Bloodied, split, but bright to the end. "Don't let them bury you." I wished he could see this. Maybe he could. 3 weeks passed. The papers were full of Gale's name, of Callum's sentencing, of other names trickling out from the cracks Gale's fall had split wide open. Some people called me a hero. Some called me stupid. The real people, the ones I cared about, just called me Isling the girl who wouldn't crawl. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Every night I thought I'd hear the roar of an engine in the drive, boots on the porch, a polite knock like the one Gale gave me when he promised I'd never sleep safe again. Instead, the knock that came one bitter Tuesday morning was the postman, a bundle of letters clutched in his chapped hand, a signature scribbled on the form like it didn't matter. Inside the bundle was one envelope. No return address. My name on the front in tight, blocky letters. I opened it at the kitchen table. Mia perched on the counter, sipping instant coffee from Mum's old chipped mug. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You didn't win. You just made us bleed. Blood runs deep. Watch your roots. Asterisk, asterisk. No signature. Just the same quiet threat that had haunted this family since Mum's first late mortgage payment. Mia read it over my shoulder. She didn't flinch. She just tore it from my hands and held it over the gas hob until it went up in a quick, smoky flame. They think we're scared, she said when it was nothing but a curl of black ash. They think they still own us. Do they? I asked. Mia's eyes found mine, bright and clear. No ghosts swimming behind the pupils tonight. Not anymore. ... A week later, I walked the garden with Anita. Spring had come early. Or maybe we just deserved it. Buds pushed up through the frozen soil, where Mum's roses had once died in their pots, neglected and smothered by weeds. Anita dug her fingers into the dirt, her nails rimmed in black, her laugh ringing against the fence like it could scare away the last echoes of Callum's laughter. "You're really gonna do it?" she asked, watching me kneel at the flower bed. "Stay here? Make it a home again?" I nodded. Mum didn't bleed herself dry so some bastard could wash his cash through this place. This house lives. So do we. Anita pressed her palm to my cheek. Warm, steady, good girl. ... Mia started painting the hallway a week after that, butter yellow, like Mum had liked it. The roller left streaks on her sleeves, flecks of paint in her hair. I watched from the stairs, a mug of tea warming my hands. "You know what this makes us?" she called down, waving the paint roller like a sword. "Fools?" I said. She laughed. "A full sound, thick and bright. Homeowners, Ash. Proper ones. ... Some nights, I dream of the ghosts anyway. Callum's boot on my shoulder. Gale's voice in my ear. Mum's whisper in the garden. Len's breath rattling in the rain. They never leave for good, but they fade. One night, weeks later, I woke to the soft click of the front gate. My pulse spiked so hard I felt it echo in my ears. I slipped out of bed, padded to the window, peered through the gap in the curtain. 3 weeks passed. The papers were full of Gale's name, of Callum's sentencing, of other names trickling out from the cracks Gale's fall had split wide open. Some people called me a hero. Some called me stupid. The real people, the ones I cared about, just called me Isling the girl who wouldn't crawl. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Every night I thought I'd hear the roar of an engine in the drive, boots on the porch, a polite knock like the one Gale gave me when he promised I'd never sleep safe again. Instead, the knock that came one bitter Tuesday morning was the postman, a bundle of letters clutched in his chapped hand, a signature scribbled on the form like it didn't matter. Inside the bundle was one envelope. No return address. My name on the front in tight, blocky letters. I opened it at the kitchen table. Mia perched on the counter, sipping instant coffee from Mum's old chipped mug. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You didn't win. You just made us bleed. Blood runs deep. Watch your roots. Asterisk, asterisk. No signature. Just the same quiet threat that had haunted this family since Mum's first late mortgage payment. Mia read it over my shoulder. She didn't flinch. She just tore it from my hands and held it over the gas hob until it went up in a quick, smoky flame. "They think we're scared," she said when it was nothing but a curl of black ash. "They think they still own us." "Do they?" I asked. Mia's eyes found mine, bright and clear. No ghosts swimming behind the pupils tonight. Not anymore. ... A week later, I walked the garden with Anita. Spring had come early. Or maybe we just deserved it. Buds pushed up through the frozen soil, where Mum's roses had once died in their pots, neglected and smothered by weeds. Anita dug her fingers into the dirt, her nails rimmed in black, her laugh ringing against the fence like it could scare away the last echoes of Callum's laughter. "You're really gonna do it?" she asked, watching me kneel at the flower bed. "Stay here? Make it a home again?" I nodded. Mum didn't bleed herself dry so some bastard could wash his cash through this place. This house lives. So do we. Anita pressed her palm to my cheek. Warm, steady. Good girl. ... Mia started painting the hallway a week after that. Butter yellow, like Mum had liked it. The roller left streaks on her sleeves, flecks of paint in her hair. I watched from the stairs, a mug of tea warming my hands. "You know what this makes us?" she called down, waving the paint roller like a sword. "Fools?" I said. She laughed. "A full sound, thick and bright. Homeowners, Ash. Proper ones. ... Some nights, I dream of the ghosts anyway. Callum's boot on my shoulder. Gail's voice in my ear. Mum's whisper in the garden. Len's breath rattling in the rain. They never leave for good, but they fade. One night, weeks later, I woke to the soft click of the front gate. My pulse spiked so hard I felt it echo in my ears. I slipped out of bed, padded to the window, peered through the gap in the curtain. Let them come. That was the promise I made to myself as I stood in the hallway, my sister's voice echoing in my ears. The note Gail's men had left already nothing but torn scraps in the bottom of the kitchen bin. It was the promise I made to Mum, wherever she was, that this house would stand as long as I did, and maybe even after that. And it was the promise I made to Len, who'd given me the last of his breath so I'd never have to crawl for men like Callum or Gail, or the faceless cowards hiding behind their polite smiles and threats, scribbled on cheap lined paper. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table instead, the same battered wood Mum used to scrub raw every Sunday, the varnish worn thin under my fingertips. The house was quiet around me, but it felt alive, humming under the floorboards. A heartbeat, deep and steady. Ours. Mine. Hers. Mia came down just before dawn, her hair pulled into a loose bun, my old sweatshirt hanging off her shoulders. She didn't say anything at first, just filled the kettle, her back to me, the hiss of the flame, the only sound between us. When she turned, her eyes were clear. "No ghost tonight. Just fire." "You're still here," she said, voice soft but steady. "Where else would I be?" She smiled. A small thing, cracked at the edges but real. "Good, because if you run, I'll drag you back." I laughed. The sound startled me. How long had it been since I'd laughed like that? A laugh that didn't taste like blood. ... We didn't tell Anita about the note. Not at first. She'd done enough. Her garden was blooming again for the first time in years, daffodils nodding their heads against the sagging fence. She came by every afternoon with baskets of bread and fresh herbs and gossip about which local councilor was about to lose his seat now that Gail's network was in the press. "You two should come stay at mine for a bit," she said one evening, her sharp eyes flicking between me and Mia. "Just until the dust settles." "The dust never settles," I said. She snorted. "Then you'll just have to sweep faster. ... Cook visited too. She'd become a fixture in my life in ways I hadn't expected. Her car rumbling up the drive every few days, her boots leaving muddy prints on Mum's clean hallway floor. She brought folders I didn't want to see, photos I couldn't bear to look at too long. Gail's empire was rotten through, a tree eaten from the inside out by men who called themselves respectable on Sundays. "They'll keep trying," she said one night, leaning back in Mum's old kitchen chair, her eyes sharp under the kitchen light. "They'll test you, see if you break." "I won't," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Even if they come for your sister again?" Mia was at the stove, stirring a pot of cheap soup. She didn't turn, she didn't flinch. She just said, "They'll have to kill us both." Cook snorted. "God help them if they try. ... Spring bled into summer. The house got brighter, bit by bit. Fresh paint over the hallway cracks. New locks on every door. Bolts. Mum would have fussed about, but I slept easier with anyway. Mia got a job at the garden center on the edge of town. The same place she'd worked as a teenager, before the rot of Callum's promises dragged her under. She came home smelling like soil and sun and the tang of green that clung to her hair for hours. Sometimes I'd watch her from the porch, kneeling in Mum's old flower beds, hands buried up to her wrists in the dirt. It felt right. Something alive growing in the place that had only held ghosts and threats for so long. But the letters didn't stop. Every few weeks, a new scrap in the post. No return address. Always the same type block letters. Always the same poison. We know where you live. We know where you sleep. Roots rot from the inside. Anita wanted us to call Cook every time. Mia wanted to burn them before they even touched the kitchen table. But I kept them, tucked in an old biscuit tin at the back of the cupboard. A record. A reminder. Not of the threat, but of the fight. ... One morning, the doorbell rang at dawn. A dull, heavy thunk that made the walls vibrate. I jolted awake in Mum's old bed, my fingers fumbling for the revolver under my pillow before my brain even caught up. Mia was already in the hallway when I stumbled out, hair tangled, eyes wide. "Who is it? Stay back," I hissed. She rolled her eyes but didn't move. I peered through the peephole. A man in a cheap suit stood on the porch, rain dripping from the collar of his thin coat. He looked like a clerk, some overworked council officer. But when he lifted his head, I saw the cold behind his eyes. The same polite emptiness that Gail wore like aftershave. I opened the door just wide enough to block Mia from view. "Miss Wren?" he asked. His voice was mild, smooth. "Got a minute?" "What do you want?" He held up a plain envelope. "Just a message." I didn't take it. "Leave it." He tucked it into the letterbox himself, then leaned in, breath misting the cold morning air between us. "Don't think it's over," he murmured. "You're not untouchable." Before I could answer, he turned and walked back down the path, footsteps squelching in the mud. No car. No backup. He vanished into the mist like a ghost. Mia stepped up behind me. "Another one?" "Another one." She brushed past me, ripped the envelope out of the letterbox, tore it in half without even opening it. "They can write as many notes as they want. We're not leaving. ... By midsummer, the headlines had stopped shouting about Gale. His first court date crawled closer like a slow, festering wound. Cook said he'd flip. He'd name names if it meant shaving years off his sentence. But she also said not to expect miracles. Men like him always knew how to keep enough dirt hidden to buy a lighter chain. One evening, I sat in the garden while Mia dug up the old rose bushes. I let the dusk settle over me like a blanket. The smell of cut grass and turned soil. The creak of the gate in the breeze. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked. Mia didn't look up. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist, dirt smudged on her cheek. "All the time," she said. "But where would we go? This house is Mum. It's Len. It's you." I felt something tighten in my throat. "Even if it's dangerous?" She stabbed the spade into the soil, leaned on it, her grin crooked. "Everything worth it is dangerous. ... The next letter didn't come by post. It came slipped under the back door. Cheap printer paper. The ink smudged like it had been clenched too tight by sweaty hands. "Roots rot. Families do too. Asterisk. Asterisk. No signature. No threat that wasn't already a promise. This time, I didn't tuck it into the biscuit tin. I stuck it to the fridge with Mum's old daisy magnet, the one she'd got free at the garden center when we were kids. I wanted to see it every morning. A reminder that they were watching. A reminder that so was I. Late one night, I woke to the sound of the back gate swinging open, the rusty squeal echoing up through the cracked window above my bed. I froze, the revolver heavy under my pillow. Footsteps on the gravel. Soft. Careful. I slipped out of bed, padded to the landing. Mia was already there, her feet bare, hair loose around her shoulders. She held a kitchen knife in one hand. Ridiculous, but real. "Stay here," I mouthed. She scowled, but didn't argue. I crept down the stairs, every creak of the old wood like a gunshot in my chest. The back door was ajar. Not enough for someone to slip through, but enough to let the cold in. I pressed my back to the wall, heart slamming. The footsteps paused. A scrape against the brick wall. A breath. I flicked on the floodlight, The garden bathed in harsh white. The shape froze. A man. Tall, hood pulled low, shoulders hunched. I flung the door open, the revolver outstretched, my voice tearing through the night. "Move and I drop you." He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just raised his hands. Slow, deliberate, and stepped back into the light. I knew that face. Brendan Hale. The same little worm who'd spilled Gail's secrets months ago before vanishing. He looked worse now. Cheeks hollow, eyes darting everywhere but mine. "Ash," he rasped. "I got something. You gotta hear it." Mia was behind me now, her breath warm on my neck. "Who is he?" "Nobody," I said. Or he was. Brendan laughed, a thin, cracked sound. "You think you're done with them? You're not done. You're the hole they're gonna pour through." I stepped closer, the barrel inches from his nose. "Talk." "They're coming," he wheezed. "Gail's done. But the others, the ones who bought the paper trails, the ones who bankrolled Callum, they want you gone. They want this house gone. Burn it down, bury you in the garden, wash it clean." I felt it then, the cold weight of the grave I'd been digging for myself since Mum's last breath. The grave they wanted to finish for me. Mia's voice was steel behind me. "What do you want?" Brendan looked at her, then at me. His eyes were wide, bright with a desperate glint. "Safe, money, ticket out, you help me, I help you." I should have shot him, or told him to run, but instead I lowered the revolver. Because I knew the truth. Every piece matters. Even roaches have maps in their bellies. ... 2 days later, Cook sat at the kitchen table again, her boots muddy from the garden path. "He's telling the truth," she said, tapping Brendan's scribbled map with the tip of her pen. "They've got new names on the paperwork already. New fake tenants. New dummy companies to scrub the deed again." Mia sat across from her, arms folded, hair tied up in Mum's scarf. She looked calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm tears the roof off. "What happens if they push?" she asked. Cook shrugged. "They'll push. Your sister's right. This doesn't end unless you make it so public they can't hide." She looked at me, those sharp eyes softening just a hair. "You ready for that?" I looked around. The kitchen Mum had built with chipped tiles and sticky floors. The hallway painted butter yellow. The ghost of Len leaning against the back door with a grin that said, "Fight, little Wren." "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready. ... We went to the press one last time. Front pages splashed with new names, new money trails, new rot tangled through the same rotten soil that had sprouted Callum Ridgway. Brendan's statements. Sasha's old files that Cook's team dug up from some locker in the basement of the station. I stood on the steps of the council building, Mia at my side, her hand tucked in mine so tight I felt our pulse merge. Reporters shouted my name. The same name Callum had tried to erase with one forged signature. I didn't flinch. I didn't crawl. "Tell them," Mia whispered. So I did. I told them everything, from Mum's final will to Len's blood on the alley floor, from Gail's promises to the notes slipped under my door, from my mother's garden to the roots they tried to rot out. I told them this house would stand. I told them so would we. ... Now, when the wind rattles the window at night, I don't reach for the revolver. Not every time, anyway. Sometimes I stand at the window and watch the shadows slide down the garden path, the floodlight flickering over the cracked flagstones. I think about the ghosts that still live in these walls. Mum's soft humming in the kitchen, Len's laugh drifting through the back gate. They think they can scare us. But they forgot what they taught us. Roots don't just rot. They grow back, stronger. And they don't ask permission to keep growing. ... If you've been listening to my story this whole time, if you've sat with me through the mud and the blood and the paper cuts, you know now. My mother's house was never just bricks. It was a promise. It still is. Let them come. ... 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.